definitely. And
Also-
you were right. You summoned Mark, and he did show up.
Yes, yeah, you
Yes.
speak his name, and he will.
His
He will
write-up,
appear.
though, is 317 pages long. Is that?
Yes,
It's incredible. We had hoped
Yes.
to read it in its entirety before this episode.
I want to. I mean, obviously, okay, Mark, if you're listening, of course your write-up is perfect, but I would like to, as a to go technical writer on this thing, and create a little bulleted list at the top for your important points and that kind of thing.
Yes, that would be phenomenal.
I did get through the introduction, which I did feel like covered a lot of it.
Yeah,
so
you got it.
It's the
roughly.
gist. Obviously, he goes then into detail on a lot of things, but
Actually, I've been doing some thinking about that.
Okay.
When we get to the end of this book, I think I have some things. Mark's not going to like it, but
okay.
I have some some thoughts as well, and when we get to the end of it, so that's going to be great. But all right, shall we, gentlemen?
Let's do it.
All right.
Welcome, Mike O'Vannon, to the Undertowers podcast. I'm Steven.
I'm Daniel.
I'm Sam,
And with us again for the second episode in a row, our good friend and co-host of the Rereading Wolfe podcast, the fourth head of Cerberus, James Wynn.
James Wynn. Hello.
Thanks again so much for coming on again, James. We had such a blast on our last discussion, and we're all so stoked to talk about Wizard, Book 2 in Wizard Night by Gene Wolfe. And before we get started, same deal, audience, as with our last episode. This is going to be spoilers galore. From beginning to end, this is going to be nothing but spoilers. And because this is spoilers for Book 2, we're going to be spoiling everything. So if you haven't read Night, if you haven't read Wizard,
if you've started with Wizard, then you better go ahead and read Night, because we're going to spoil it.
you are a confused individual.
Yeah,
Yes.
but consider yourself warned. I will say, and I don't know. I want to try this at some point. I don't think it would work at all. But I have had the thought of, because of the way that Book 1 is the Knight, Book 2 is the Wizard, but put together it's the Wizard Knight. I have wondered how the story would read and if it would work at all reading it in reverse.
I've thought about that. Actually, I thought about that today. That when I was reading it, it's published as the Wizard Knight, so I was wondering whether there was going to be some sort of circular process like there is in the Book of the New Sun.
Well, and I'm not convinced that there isn't, and I think we can talk about it when we.
I want to hear that, because I haven't.
It's unbelievably half baked, but I think that maybe.
Or is it just because Night Wizard sounds lame?
Well,
that's why
is
that it's
cool.
probably a publishing decision, but
for sure. But Night Wizard sounds like an 80s.
Or like
crime,
It does sound like
drama.
a nocturnal wizard.
Yeah. Turn to one like past midnight or something. I'm the Night Wizard.
The Night Wizard.
During the day, I'm just a friendly postman, but at nights.
You could have an 80s cop drama.
Yeah, the
Knight and Wizard.
Night Wizard.
Yeah, with a really cool car.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the
Well, of
requisite
course.
for Night Wizard.
Like Quantum Leap. Like
Yeah.
it feels like Quantum Leap or something.
Absolutely. So Wizard. Wizard picks up right after the end of Night.
Well, it's been
Kind of,
some
sort of.
months,
Sort
We
of,
get
yeah.
it
20
depends on
years.
which timeline you're talking about. And
because
that's
Abel
kinda
has
where
died.
Right.
Yes.
It's practically a new novel, really. The protagonist of the
it
last
is.
novel has died. There's not
Yes.
even question. It's not like he died off screen either. He
No.
died and was carried away by Valkyries.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is something I obviously knew that he died on the first read through, but my first read through I don't think I picked up on how many times throughout the rest of the story he's saying to other people and other people are saying to him, like, no, dude, you died. Like,
Yes.
you are
fell
dead.
into the ocean and you
are
died.
dead.
Right.
Because he describes falling from the dragon, but the Valkyrie picking him up. So you could almost misinterpret that as the Valkyrie like swoops in
And like saves him
and
kind
saves
of last
him,
minute.
but
That's
she-
not how Valkyries work.
no,
either.
it's not. They
No.
they come and get you once you're dead.
Yeah, that's kind of a prerequisite to the Valkyrie showing up.
Well, it's
Yes.
hard to say. I mean, if Abel had fallen into the ocean, wouldn't he just go to Elfris?
That's a good.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a good question, and he is sort of like, Okay, now I'm pondering this. But no, he definitely dies though. He definitely dies. And again, it's probably not just from the ocean. It's
Right.
also
No one goes
Gringarm.
in Mythgarther at least,
yeah.
and Abel might be an exception, but in Mythgarder you don't go to Sky unless you die.
Yeah, unless
That's
you
the way
die.
it works.
No, it is.
Which is in line with the Norse mythos
Exactly.
part,
It
where
is.
you don't get to go to well,
Valhalla.
specifically Valhalla, but in man, why am I forgetting the name of Asgard? You don't get to
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
you
yeah,
a human don't get to go to Asgard except through Valhalla or what is it? Is it Folkvanger, the Freya's Hall? But anyways, you have to have died bravely in battle in order to get
go
to
Yeah.
that place.
Right.
No,
So-
that tracks. And that is definitely confirmed because we see that later with Garvin too, after
Yeah.
the
Yes.
fight with Setter.
Yeah.
So I do feel like that's
He gets to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is, and starting without Abel's perspective too, you could almost feel like Abel's not going to even be in this book unless you're, if you're reading continuously and you're remembering that, hey, Abel is ostensibly
dead
writing
and-
all of this
Yeah.
in letters to Ben.
Oh well, yeah, that's a good point. He has to be.
In a lot of ways, it kind of felt like he wasn't in this novel. Like on my
he's
read, it was
absent.
like
He's
the
absent a
total-
lot.
Well, and he's just like
Yeah.
he is not the same. He doesn't
He's
look
very
the same.
different. Yes, he's a
Yeah.
very different character in
Yeah.
this book, I feel like. But no,
And
it is.
no,
Sorry, you first. Yeah.
Well, it's just that you start the novel, and now it's Tug. It's like it's Tug's novel.
Yes.
Mhm.
He's the one who is, beating up on Svan. He's
Yes.
the one who
Yeah.
has Org always around him. He's
Yes.
the one who has Gilf. He's the one. Manny is the one talking to him all the
Right.
time.
Yes. And Tug, it's interesting the way the first time I read through it, which we've talked about how the first time through a Gene Wolfe novel is, it's not worthless. You have to do the first time, but it's just a part of it, and it's not going to make as much sense. But
It's a different feeling.
it is absolutely.
But you just have to kind of just ride.
You just got to roll with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the first time it was so frustrating to be like, you're with Abel every step of the way in the first book. And then to now have like Tug be the main character basically for at least kind of going every other chapter. And then, that Abel goes to Sky and then he's immediately not telling you anything. You get like a few paragraphs of like, well, we did a few things. He, Thor made himself big or Thunor, excuse me. And, you get just like a little bit of sip, and it was like, why are we not talking about what's going on? Like, what's funny is the second time I read through it, it didn't bother me one bit. It's like,
But no,
because
the first time the first time it
so
felt
frustrating.
Like, it felt like reading Broken Sword when Scaflock
oh sure
goes on his grand Irish adventure that is
Yeah.
like months worth of crazy shenanigans in a couple paragraphs. And it's like, I want that story. Where is
that
it?
story? Yeah.
It was a crazy wild time. We'll get to it.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later.
That'll be in a different book. But but then as it rolls, you quickly. The thing is, I kind of want to breeze by this initial part before they actually get to Utgard. But so much happens, specifically, Tug healing Baki, which feels very very important. Because Abel isn't able to use his powers as he says now that he's an Oversin. I do think that's the way to understand Abel now, that he is an Oversin.
Well, someone refers to him as an Oversin towards the end of the book.
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, he's definitely Oversin, and this is, you want to bring us back to Christian themes. This is like Christ emptying himself of all of his divinity, and being walking as a man, and that's what Abel has to do. He's not allowed to use anything that he could do as an Oversin, and in fact, he can't even do some of the things that he would normally do even before he was an Oversin.
Yeah,
he can't like just walk off to Elfris again.
Yeah,
and I think that's part of what is important about that scene with Tug healing Baki is we're getting a little bit more of kind of the idea of the hierarchy of powers in this world where Tug has to accept his place as the god of Baki and then can heal her, but we're also getting that first introduction to this idea that, hey, Abel's got extra stuff he can do and can't do it. And that word, I
Someone's
just
not
say the
able
word
to.
can't. This is something that I had noticed in one instant. There's two instances, I believe, in Wizard. Because all throughout Night, we talked about this a little bit last episode, but all throughout Night, Abel is aping Sir Ravd with his grammar corrections of may versus can't. And then there's two moments in Wizard where he very specifically uses can't himself.
You're right.
Where may would have been perhaps grammatically appropriate, but he very specifically says can't.
Yeah, what do you think
was
that means?
I think he's being pretty emphatic.
Yeah.
He literally can't.
Well, he can't. Well,
He may,
right.
but he can't.
He
or
can't
else there's
without
consequences.
costing honor, right? It's a
Yes.
big honor. We've kind of set up a few things that we haven't paid off yet. He has cut a bargain with Garcich to kill Kaluli or to fight
Or to
Kaluli.
fight her, not yes.
to
yes.
fight Kaluli. And he's also made an agreement with Duke Martyr that he's going to go and hold a ford at a river
Yes.
over the winter.
Yes.
So he hasn't done that because he died. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So and now he's got this other promise that he's made to Valfather come here that he can't use any of his powers
Yes.
as an Overson, but even as a god of the elf. So he can't give any normal human could give their blood to an elf,
Right.
and as a sacrifice, or I don't know what you would call it when you give blood to one of your worshipers, and he can't do that even.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And it is interesting that that really is the backdrop of this book. And then you feed right from that Tug has to take that place, Tug or Tug, for Baki, and then Baki becomes connected to Tug, and then there's
Mhm.
and then that really sets up a break between Uri and Baki, who really aren't a pair anymore.
Mhm.
No, yeah, they're not really a team here. They're actually
No.
rivals from now
I was
on.
going to say they're
Basically.
pretty. Yeah, from that moment,
Yeah.
they're actually working towards counter ends.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And from there, that's right after that is when our Abel then does go to hold the pass and fight battles until there's no more ice. And then this is something I really missed the first time. I thought he actively lost to Sir Leort,
Mhm.
and I guess maybe it's a little up in the air. But I think he throws the fight because if he loses, he can go try to find Assyria. I think is
Right.
what
Yeah,
happens.
he's trying to lawyer his way out of
He's
this.
trying to lawyer
yeah.
that, like, I don't want to stay here for months and months and months. So, which is kind of, it's kind of interesting.
that's a little bit. James, have you read the Book of Nights?
No, I have not.
So I picked this up and read this since we last spoke. This is, for anybody listening and watching, this is the Book of Nights by Yves Maynard, and this is the author and the book that Night is dedicated to. And there's so many things that Gene Wolfe was obviously inspired by from this book. And one of the things that caught my attention with Wizard specifically is when the main character in the Book of Nights is being instructed in knighthood. He's very specifically taught how a knight does not lie, but there is a very specific way that you can also kind of skirt around telling the whole truth. And that's a very important part of being a knight, because again, you can't lie, you have to be honest, but sometimes if you're completely honest, that will screw up a strategy or a plan, or get
Yeah.
you in trouble, or get somebody else in trouble, or dishonor you, or dishonor somebody else. And so you have to kind of know your way around it. And
Yeah.
after having read that and the instructor character in Book of Nights, the master, very specifically instructing in that regard, I saw Abel doing that all throughout Wizard.
Yeah, there's a lot where he's not saying everything, but
he's not out and out lying almost all the time, but he even admits that he kind of tells half truths a lot.
Yeah.
Well, is there a section there on third grade grammar? Oh, really? Can you? I don't know.
It's May.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
So we were having so much fun talking last time. We didn't talk about some of the characters that are kind of important in this.
We did.
There was, of course, we talked about Abel trading a baby for Gilf.
We did.
He won that deal, but we didn't talk about how he gets Manny from the witch.
We didn't.
There's a dead witch.
Dead witch.
And Manny's in her house. Manny is her familiar. And
what a wild scene that is too, by the way, before we get totally away from it.
It's very creepy.
Like this crone, this nasty aged crone laying on the bed asking for food, and he gives her a piece of food, and that's the moment that her body realizes she's dead and her head just falls off. That was one of those Wolfe moments in a chapter that I had to reread a couple of times. It's like, what just happened? That's wild.
I mean, I'm a good person, so I like dogs better than cats, but I really 100%. Enjoy Manny. He really inhabits what it means to be a cat.
Yes.
He really is. He's my favorite cat, I think.
He's 100%. Very switched, like, as an aside, throughout the entire story, he's really switched on to like an accurate definition of cats and what a cat, if they could talk, would say.
Yeah.
Like, all cats are royalty, and that's just how it is. Like,
Yeah, he knows.
How else to explain it, but you got, cats.
No sense of it. Yeah, I wish I'd written down all of my favorite Manny quotes in this.
Yes.
He has a lot of things to go on a poster for.
Yeah, it's most of the things he says. And I love how instantly he and Gilf are not at each other's throats, but very much dislike each other.
Yes. Right. Yeah. They're tolerating each other the whole time.
It's the dog cat relationship.
Yeah. And Monty gets some great stuff in Night, because we really did we got so stuck in, especially with the first and some of the broader themes, that to kind of go over briefly, I think where we left off, Abel is going to, actually we didn't really even talk about Shearwall that much, but Abel goes to Shearwall, is eventually put on a quest, I'm yada-yadaing this a lot, to go hold the pass that he ends up later holding in Wizard. But at that then he acquires Monty, and then eventually gets up with Lord Beale and Lady Iden.
And Lady Iden, very important. She has the hots for Abel.
She does.
Right from the beginning.
Yes.
But she takes his cat instead. So
yes, and accepts the cat, I guess, as tribute until a later date.
He's a cute little pussy cat.
Yes, he sure is. I really do love the scene in the night when they go to do the spell as well. That's just a wonderful scene.
Well, and that's a great Manny scene too. Like, they're doing it all wrong, and
Manny keeps guiding them out to do magic.
Having to be like, you should actually be doing it this way. You should do it out here. You should do it this way.
It is interesting though that Gilf is the best dog and has another side of him too, but as a Hound of Sky really is just a dog who maybe restrains himself, while Monty though is something else. Monty is a spirit and a cat combined, as we come to find out.
Yeah. That's in Wizard, I believe, and that's a really great description of this of what Manny is. That he's a cat. He's a cat.
Yeah,
but he is a elemental spirit that was bound to that cat. So which is immortal.
Yes,
but free, and now he's neither cat nor elemental spirit. And when he dies, finally, the cat will die, and he'll go back to just being an elemental spirit, which, once again, that's a little bit like people, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's a really good metaphor. And it's also a great metaphor for the elf, I think, which are, as we really come to find out in Wizard, and we'll maybe get there more as we kind of work through the story, but they are these beings of stick and twigs and mud and fire and whatever it is.
What the blood and guts of Ymir, pretty much. Like,
yeah, basically.
Of the world.
But they've had kind of elemental spirits attached to them too, which is why they have any being. But although I think it does distinguish, and maybe I'd have to think it, that when the elf die, they are just gone. It doesn't seem like there's a part of them that carries on.
I'm not sure what I believe that's true. Where it may be sort of a resurrection myth. And actually, in Tolkien, he has something like that.
Yes.
In which they cannot ever escape the circle of the world.
Yes.
And only humans after they die know what will come. Or after the world ends, knows what will ever find out what happens beyond that. Whereas elf they're always reincarnated. They're always sent back to the West where they're reincarnated.
Yeah. But reincarnated as themselves again. Yeah.
As themselves, and also but always in this world. So whenever this world ends, they will end with it.
Yes. Just sad. Poor elf.
Oh, they're immortal. Poor things.
I know, they're fine. They're fine.
They had a good run.
They had a good run.
Yeah. The fact that Manny, back to the cat, is trapped as a spirit is also just like a great metaphor for being a cat too.
Yeah.
Like, imagine the super strength that you have as a cat, being able to like jump so high, but then you're
and as a house cat specifically.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Imagine having the strength within your like own, I guess, proportions, but then you're limited by being only 15 pounds.
Right. Yeah.
That sucks. Imagine having that and just being gigantic. Or
I'm supposed to be a tiger.
Well, that's what I was going to say. One of our old cats, I remember,
I feel like the book is kind of about the cat at some point, because it's
suddenly that's the protagonist.
Well, that's the thing. I just keep going down these side. I'm like, damn, that is what a cat's like. And I was not high or under the influence of anything reading this, but I definitely went off on some cat tangents reading.
Well, let's go forward on cats since we're already on it, because
okay, great. Yeah.
I think a lot of people miss the Puss in Boots references.
Oh,
because he's there with Toog. Toog has these giant boots.
I missed
that.
He
wears.
Oh my gosh.
And Manny has to have this agreement with him. Okay, you're going to help me get what I want. I'm going to help you get what you want. And I almost was just waiting, especially the first time I read this book, for the time when Manny convinces some giant to turn into a mouse.
Right.
But of course, in this case, it's Toog who is Puss, because he's wearing the boots, and he's the one who has to defeat the giants.
Yeah, that's very
incredible.
That's very true. That's so.
I haven't
funny.
seen that. I haven't seen that anywhere, and I missed it totally, and I'm ashamed. But that's a phenomenal reference.
One of my favorite notes about Monty is that it's very his name is very clearly like the Manichaeism, or am I saying that right?
It was
the Gnostic third century dualistic religion with there's the spirit and the body, and they're very, very separate. And it feels like Monty has to be an allusion to that, because he's part cat, part spirit. And it is interesting. Monty basically drops out of the story after the Room of Lost Loves, doesn't he? He's just gone, isn't he?
Well, he has his own major event there. He's not gone, but I'm pretty sure he's around. He's with Aiden most of the time.
Yeah, but does he have a scene? Am I misremembering? I feel like he wanders off and we just don't hear from him again.
Well, no, we definitely see him again, because he and Abel talk about.
Yeah, they talk after the fact. Yeah, you're right. But then there's a point in there, and then he's not really.
It's more like and this is what Manny got.
And then he moves on. Okay.
Well, but I was just thinking about this, is that if you were doing the Wizard Night, then the night would be season 1, right?
Yeah.
If you did a streaming series on this, but then you would have the Wizard, and really, if you were going to have anything, it would only the season 2 would just like last to like halfway through. Maybe not even halfway through.
Yeah,
where they finally defeat the giants. They're all going home, and Abel's going to go back to his house. And then
Utgard is definitely.
And it's like, wait a minute, there's a lot of book here.
Yeah,
yeah. No, it's 3 seasons for sure.
Yeah.
It is the pacing in this book as on the reread it the first time I read it especially it was like what is happening like the Utgard thing takes forever but then also it's taking so long you think it's going to just this is probably the story and then it is it ends and and then there's a big battle and King Gilling's dead all of a sudden and well wounded and then dead and
pretty much wounded like the whole time.
basically
like, he's like, and oh man, all the descriptions of him like bleeding through his mattress and stuff with like
pretty
little
gnarly.
people standing underneath of it. Like,
and then you do get the Garsic and Kalili sort of resolution kind of out of nowhere, where you get the Lost chapter. They wander into Elfris in a mist, and then there's all these dragons around and a white dragon and we're getting way ahead of ourselves if we're talking through this, but it is that comes out of just nowhere, and then all of a sudden they're fighting Setter, and then you're back, and then it is like it does at that point. You've not really established or aware exactly that Abel has a message for Arthur, so that at that point there is, like you said, a lot of book left, and you're like, what? I have no idea what's going to happen. Although I will say, I think that might be my favorite stretch of the book. I really enjoy his feats in the capital, and then everything spirals out from there, and then a lot happens in a very condensed period of time there. But
yeah, well, okay, we can take this in a more orderly fashion this time.
Yeah, I was going to say we have before we get too far away, we've gone backwards and we've introduced Manny. Any special thoughts on it? We've mentioned Lady Iden, Lord Beale, Sir Garvin. I think those are kind of some of the main characters because we've talked about Svan and Tug.
I mean, is Sir Garvin's like famous, like, please don't steal her from me?
Please don't steal her.
Is that in Wizard?
That was but these are just thinking.
Oh, actually, that might be a Knight. Actually,
it is a Knight.
I do love that moment. Like, listen, man.
I know you're great.
Please don't
have any other princess
from me. Yeah,
it's like his Jolene moment.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I just thinking back to some of the characters that maybe we didn't talk about too much in Night that then are much bigger factors here in that first half of Wizard. It's kind of that Lord Beale's group.
Right. Yeah. So Lord Beale and Iden, they're there to have a peace treaty with the giants, right? Yeah. And Iden is going to have to get married to a giant, and we get a graph at one point. The witch starts reappears in this book.
That's part 2 of the graphic description.
Yeah.
in night when we meet Gerda, she gives the kind of the first
what it's like to give birth to a
because she's had 2 kids by a giant.
Right. So that's kind of our first indication of the horrors of that process. And then in Wizard, then when the witch comes back and is describing what will happen, it somehow gets even worse and more
I do
graphic.
think that is the most gut-wrenching, sickening. It's one of the most sickening things I've ever read, to be totally honest. It's pretty bad.
Yeah. And people, this is the kind of thing that gives Gene one of those reputations that he has of being too mean to the women. I mean, I think he has a point in doing it. He's not soft pedaling any of this stuff. And if you're going to show that that there is a society or people who are cruel, and you're going to have them be cruel to someone who is weak and should not have to face that. So I mean, he has a point. But I will say that the editor of science fiction for Playboy used to be on the Earth list. She was an old guard.
Oh, wow.
She got to the scene where Mag talks about what it means for your wedding night with a giant, and she said, "I'm out." And she never posted again.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, one thing that struck me with both of those scenes, it's extremely graphic and very disturbing. But I felt that it was not gratuitous because
I didn't either.
There is that trope in mythology and in a lot of these old stories of the virgins being sacrificed, or the gods coming down and coupling with with human virgin women, and it struck me as very like, oh, okay,
He's
this
taking
is
him serious.
part
He's
of
taking
this
it
is
seriously.
yes,
he is.
that's
Well,
what it felt like to me.
And this work. This is how it
Yeah,
works.
and
And
it's
it-
the
yeah.
horror of that.
And I do actually I also think the way it's mentioned, it's a dead witch telling it to Toog. So you've got some remove. There's not a it's
Right.
kinda
No, it's actually happening. And
it's not actually happening.
And
There is
but
some,
she
like,
is talking. She is trying to convey how horrible it is
yes,
going to
she's
be.
setting the stakes for what's going on.
Mhm.
And which also sets it for the reader, which I think, especially because you get the scene in the night, there is some like there's an awareness in your head of like, wait, sometimes the Angerborn will take human women, and there's some of them like, and also one of the things I think that's really interesting in the book is Abel is always comparing the Angerborn and different things. Like he's never explicit with size. There's
Mhm.
always like he was as tall as that tree, and there's like there's a lot of like you can kind of see it in your head, but it's really hard to say. But eventually, it's kind of revealed that they're roughly 20 feet tall.
Yeah, they're not like ants, but they're
Yeah.
big.
They're very
Right.
big, but there's also a lot of stories where a giant is something like 10 to 12 feet tall, and so these are in the range
Yeah.
of about twice that large. And also
That's what a mouse is. That's what the
the
mice
mouse.
are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The NBA players, mice.
But yeah, that's very
something unimaginable.
But that is very, very large. That is very large. And yeah, so the realities of that, I do think that scene, it's understandable for it to be upsetting. And it would be upsetting. I think there's no way around it. And so, but I do think it does actually add something to the book, even though it is like horribly gross.
When you've got to
Mhm.
have the horror there, because later on, and I'll speak, I'll be vague about it now so we can get to it later. But when Abel confronts the man that probably killed Gilling, he says, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
And I feel like we, the audience, have to have that. Without that level of horror of like what's going to happen to Iden, we might feel like, oh, why would you do that? You just wrecked this peace treaty, instead of reading all of that and being like, nope, kill him. Just kill him.
He's got to go.
And it's also an opportunity for Iden to show that nobility is not just about fighting, being and honor. She herself is putting her life and her body on the line for her country.
Yes.
She is.
Yeah.
And really comports herself with like a really incredible grace. Iden's actually a really phenomenal character. And I also felt like we talked briefly earlier about her infatuation with Abel. I felt like that was handled really well. Where there's a certain part of you, because obviously the series is so in and out of the story. There was a certain part of me rooting for them to maybe end up together. Obviously,
why can't they be? Yeah, leave that to Siri alone.
Yeah, she's kind of fickle in and out and kind of whatever's going on. Obviously, going through it several more times, it wouldn't be right for that to be the story, and her eventual relationship with Svan after Garvin's passing and the resolution of the Utgard really is satisfying for both Svan and Iden, I feel like. And it is an interesting inversion on Garvin sacrificing himself in kind of multiple capacities, which
it's
all right,
she's a very strong character. Maybe one of the strongest in the story, I think, actually.
Yes. No, she's one of the heroes. I mean, she's every bit as significant to this story as Garvin, as certainly as Toog. So who comes back? We talk about a lot of people who we thought were gone for this novel. Why would you follow them anymore? Suddenly reappear at the beginning of this novel, right? Bold Bertold shows up. And we discover that when the giants abduct men to be their slaves, they immediately blind them. And so Bold Bertold is blind.
Blind Bertold.
Yeah. And Pook is abducted as well.
Yep. And Ulfa.
Blinded.
But yeah, he's blinded, but because he's
just
like Pop. The thing is, he's like Popeye, right?
I know.
And he's only got one eye, so he's got
he's
this
just-
gift
I can't-
of
I can't
rolling
see
one eyeball
anything.
in the back of his head, and
It's
well,
so
look,
funny.
there's no reason to blind me. I'm already blind.
It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
I love it.
Classic Pook.
Oh my gosh.
No, I was so happy to see all of them again. And I
No pun intended.
I don't know. I should have guessed that Wolfe would also follow what I call the George R. R. Martin rules, where if you don't see a character die, then they're not dead.
Yeah, well, that's probably.
And even sometimes then they're not dead.
Well,
But-
Rabbit died.
Yeah,
we
true.
did
he
say
did.
that.
Yep.
He did.
That's true. Yes.
We do get
you get the broken
we get,
sword
we get
and everything,
we do
but-
get confirmation.
But as far as like Bertold, it's a fair assumption that Bertold is dead, but you don't actually, looking back at it and on the second reread and everything, there is no actual evidence to say that Bertold is dead. We
He's
don't
just
see
gone.
anything.
Yeah.
He's just gone.
Yep.
So it was. I remember it was the same way on the reread, but I was just very happy to see him again. But it was also kind of heartbreaking too.
Yeah.
Him hearing Abel's voice and not putting it together, and then Abel, not for right or wrong, not
being able to express.
not being able to say that it is him. That
Right.
was just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I once had a kid. I once had a brother named Abel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was devastating. But him getting them out and everything was very, very satisfying.
Right.
And him and Gerda being together again,
Right.
despite all the tragedy.
So as we get situated into the Utgard scene, and I probably am skipping over a few things. This novel is really dense.
Yeah, you get it's like a Seinfeld episode where you try it. Well, let me tell you sort of what happened, it was about, and next thing you know, you end up just saying every single line.
I know exactly. But the throne room scene, when they get to Utgard, they've brought the wall, and they actually lose the gifts and they recapture them, and then they go into the castle. The scene in front of King Gilling's throne, where then they're like, let's have they've all come in armor and they're like, let's have a tournament. Let's have 2 of your guys fight our guys. Just as a piece of fantasy writing, I that was another one where like I just feel so stressed out reading it. It is so tense and masterfully done.
Right.
Just on a pleasure it's funny I'm talking about being stressed, but like just at a like intensity pleasurable level, it is just so well written. And then obviously that scene really spirals out of control as they begin fighting, and it's Gilling also kills the herald, and then they fight and it's going really poorly, and then all of a sudden Gilf starts killing and turning out all the lights, and then no, did I say Gilf? I meant Org, sorry.
Org.
Org. Who is invisible, obviously, so he can run around and do that stuff. And then from there, really the rest of the Utgard spirals out of that one first scene. And there's like tons of ramifications, and it's interesting to where like they're married, and I was never sure how much King Gilling was really, how much they were like speaking for him and manipulating him, but it does seem like there was genuine fondness and affection between Gilling and Iden to some degree. At least,
well, she is
on Gilling's side.
Yeah, well, yeah. Does he? That's a good point, because everyone says that the thing about the giants is they don't love, they don't have any love.
Well,
and he says, no, we love. We are never loved.
We are never loved.
I
And
thought that was a perfect example
by their mothers.
Yeah.
I also feel like, and we talked about that last week, where Wolfe's villains are often almost heroes. The Angerborn are not almost heroes, but Wolfe manages to do a really great job of having these really truly awful characters that you really still manage feeling pretty sorry for.
Right.
Sometimes. Some of them, like
and
Gilling. Yes.
Well, and I
when they're
feel
weak and they can't do any damage, that's when you say, "Oh man, I feel so sorry." That's
Yeah, I
kind of
know.
like,
I know.
and then
Well,
but then they, when they're strong, you say, "Well, we have to kill them." So
yes,
That's
exactly.
got to.
Well, and I mean feeling sorry for them, like just like a pity, like truly they are never loved, even by their mothers, even by the Angerborn women that we eventually meet. There is just animosity and strife, and it is just bad all the time. And it just like at least for me, it broke my heart. That doesn't mean they don't need to all basically be killed, but it is sad.
You should love them.
I'm just saying it's sad.
Kill them, but like,
Yeah.
oh,
well, that kind of ambivalence is something that Wolfe is. I just feel it very often when I'm reading
Yes.
a Wolfe story. He's
Yes.
very good at that. And also, here's a guy who's famous for just cutting it off the scene whenever there's a big fight scene coming.
Yeah.
He delivers. He delivers
Yeah,
over and over and over in this.
He does
novel.
actually. He does.
Yeah, Wizard has all the amazing fight scenes. But I to that point of his ability to write characters that actually do have that moral gray quality. I really love grimdark fantasy. And that's like, supposedly one of the hallmarks of that subgenre. And I admire that Wolfe somehow manages to write those characters that are morally gray, or even are bad, but you can have a little sympathy for them.
They still have humanity,
empathy,
or
yes.
humanity.
even the Angerborn have a humanity
without ever it never, especially Wizard Knight, never dips into feeling grimdark territory.
No.
So I admire that a lot about his.
Even though Abel he's kind of a Conan character, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You come against him, he's going to squash you like a bug, and but
also you probably should be.
But
if you come up against
you've
Abel,
earned.
then at that point you've earned it.
By that point,
I mean, unless you're the Knight of Leopards, then he like kind of
then he'll
let
you do
feel like you're kind of badass for a second. Like,
yeah, but
like,
that's just he was just trying to get out of something in that case.
It's true.
Well, totally, but
It's true.
Trying to get fired from his job.
Feel pretty badass for a second, probably.
No, he's a very skilled knight. But
well, let's backtrack again a little bit, because we touched on this melee in the throne room, but before any of that, Abel returns as they're on the road back to Utgard, and in the midst of the battle to get back the treasures.
With
this green knight appears,
and he has talk about his Pokemon. He's got a horse now.
Yes.
Major upgrade to his Pokedex.
No big deal. I have a horse. It's the greatest horse. It's like a woman, but not a woman. But she flies.
It's not really a horse either. I just no, it looks like a horse. It's a flying horse. And,
and she's also not full grown. Just saying, you're gonna get bigger.
But I love all of that.
We talk about high fantasy. He has a horse, and it's literally going to be a union with a big.
That's right.
Yes.
You touched on this, I think, Daniel, but the not getting just getting the little sprinkles of hints throughout of his adventures in Skay. One of my favorites, and I think it's referenced there at the beginning or close to it, is returning to the King Arthur symbolism, is
the Green Knight.
Abel literally being the Green Knight, and it's referenced again closer towards the end of the book about Gawain bowing his head for the axe stroke. But the idea of Abel, not only is Abel obviously Arthur and Merlin and Lancelot, but he's also straight up the Green Knight, which is just it's very fun.
Yeah, and that story is all about honor, right? It's all about, because Gawain sells his honor in order to not die, and he must live with that shame from that point on.
Yeah. No, it's I loved that twist, and I wondered if it was coming. Or I figured it was at least a reference. I didn't think it was going to be as explicit, but when he shows up, in all green armor, and even before that, him taking the color green because of Desiri with his shield and with the banner pennant that the sailor's wife the captain's wife sews for him on the Western Trader.
He's literally the Green Knight, right?
Yeah,
He's
which is
that's what you would call him.
Yeah,
right.
It's just very fun.
Yep.
So all those references are great. But yeah, then so kind of concurrent to the melee, we have the jousting and duels going on.
Yep.
In the mountains. The first of which being Sir Leort.
Yes. Then he fights Sir Wattet, who won't yield.
Yeah.
And we're not exactly told why.
Yeah, literally about to die.
Yeah. Until it comes later and then it turns out the third knight, who is all dressed in black with skulls, is Duke Martyr in disguise.
Which is metal as hell.
It's great.
Got me.
I loved that the Duke that he's been journeying, he spent the majority of night trying to find and go into service of is the Black Knight. It's a great situation with the skull on his helmet, which is very great, very cool.
Yeah, and it I do really enjoy that Wattet is so worried that Abel will kill Martyr. I'm guessing just by mistake almost, or not by accident.
In the story, are we after like Thiazi and all that stuff? Because talked about Thiazi.
No, we haven't talked about Thiazi yet, but Thiazi is introduced in the throne room, but then most of his more pertinent details come after that. So we sort of half backtracked to the
but now we're kind of caught up because I think if I'm remembering correctly, the fight in the throne room and the aftermath of that is all happening around the same time
as the
duels are going.
Three
but I always kind of thought that Sir Wattet was worried both ways, either that Abel was going to kill Duke Martyr or that Duke Martyr was going to kill Abel.
Interesting.
Which, because that's the whole Black Knight thing.
I thought he was really concerned that Abel might kill.
I mean, I think that's probably the majority of the concern.
Because Martyr's like in his 60s or something. So
I may be off base, but the Black Knight's thing of no yielding either way. And we don't know, to get anime about it for a second, we don't know Duke Martyr's power level at this point.
Sure.
And he's showing up all in black with a friggin' skull helm. So yeah, I kind of took it that it was at least a little bit of concern for this knight that he considers his friend.
Right.
Or in the line of, hey, I don't want you to kill Duke Martyr.
I don't want you to kill my lord. Yeah. And they all have great affection for Duke Martyr because he's a very good Duke.
Yeah.
You meet a lot of bad royalty.
And Wattet doesn't even really have that
good
Duke.
Yeah.
But a good dude is.
He's a good dude too. Okay.
But Wattet doesn't
Duke
have.
abides.
Nice. At this point in the story, though, Wattet doesn't really even have that great of an idea of how skilled Sir Abel is.
Yeah.
Well,
outside of fisticuffs, he knows that he can throw hands.
Well, no, because really, it's not that. This is the thing that's crazy about the story.
Like a month or two later,
it's really not that long from when he left. And
it's a month or two, but it's 20 years in Skye.
But he also died.
Yeah,
and he came back after being dead for 20 years.
Yeah.
In his own experience.
It really is just an example of we needed to do way more podcasts on this because we left out uns and duns last week. Org. I mean, I think they got mentions, but there really is just so much in these books, even though they're 900 pages, which is pretty long. They are dense for
so much stuff packed in.
I feel like in the hands of a different author, these books would be 3 or 4 times as long as.
Definitely. Yeah, you'd have in the 70s, 60s, you'd have a line of 20 paperbacks out.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Sure. Even 100%. Now, I feel like you'd have 5 to 10 600-page books.
Yes, that is what a different author would have done for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was kind of my feeling with that. Wattet was maybe at least a little bit concerned for Abel's safety as well. But I found, especially on the reread, knowing what comes later, each of the different. I mean, obviously, Duke Martyr doesn't have much of a reaction. He's kind of KO'd in his in their bout. But Sir Leort, winning and then drawing a turn
Yes.
getting bombarded by
Yeah.
the ghosts.
It's like never mind.
Yeah.
Look, I'll let you have
Never
everything
mind.
but the sword. I just
Yeah.
don't want you to have the sword.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't want me to have the sword? Well, I'm taking the
Sure,
sword.
okay.
I'm definitely taking that.
So the question is, does Sir Leort become one of the ghosts too? And does he
Because he
like,
held it for a moment.
yeah, and they like drew on him.
Well, don't you have to? I always thought that
You maybe
held
have,
it and
maybe
died.
maybe you have to
wielding
die.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Well,
comes up with Arthur later too.
and
He's like,
His
am I going to
pride-
be?
His pride died.
Yeah,
I don't-
maybe so.
And also, I don't. I think the requirement to become one of the ghosts
Is to
of
be
the sword
unworthy.
is to be unworthy to wield it.
Yes.
And all he really did was draw it. He didn't
Yeah.
actually wield it against anyone.
So maybe not.
I think Leort has a good shot at going.
Survive, not having to be
Sky.
captured by the sword.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he's.
I
think
guess
he
if
stands a
you're
good
going to Sky, you're not probably gonna
That
be a
unworthy,
ghost, sword ghost.
chance. We don't see him die, so
No.
who knows? But
Who knows?
I think of all of the knights that we see, I think he's got
I think so.
he's got a good shot.
I
of
think
going.
so. Oh man. Okay, so we're back to
Yelling, getting stabbed.
Yep.
That feels like the next big thing.
Yelling getting
Well, hold
stabbed,
on.
yeah.
I wanted to touch on one thing because you mentioned Uns. So while we're still in this encampment, as he's gathering now these knights and everybody that is yielding to him being Sir Abel. I believe it's in this section, or maybe in any case, it was around here. He's talking to someone about Uns and how he's treats Uns a little harshly.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it actually like,
And Uns is a hunchback.
Uns
Yes.
is a hunchback, and kind of country bumpkin, but he's followed Sir Abel in order to serve him and be with him and be around him.
Mhm.
And Abel is kind of accused of being too hard on him. And he said something that I found actually like really kind of sweet in a way, but more telling of Abel's character and why people are so drawn to him.
Mm-hmm.
That he treats Uns like that because he wants Uns to know that he's not getting special treatment because he's a hunchback. He's actually a valued member of the team, and he has expectations on him and a job to do, and he's going to be expected to do that job,
Right.
just like anybody else would be.
Yeah. And you can tell in the story that it's that quality that is why Uns wants to be with Abel.
Yeah. Well, and I think why everybody is drawn to Abel.
He's treated
character.
like a full person, not
Yes.
someone
Right.
less than.
Yeah.
He respects everybody, even when he's braining them.
Yes.
So
Yeah. No, he if
Pointing him through the guts.
unless you give Sir Abel a reason to have no respect for you, he will treat you with honor and respect.
no, he's definitely, but he's a character with a very particular kind of morality that makes you kind of scratch your head about how is it he's a good guy. He's a really good guy. How is he a good guy?
Right.
It is, especially in Night. I feel like there are moments where, we touched on this briefly last week, but it was Abel is some people interpret him as being a bit of a bully or a bit too forward with violence. But I do think the more I sat with the novel, I found reading it initially too, honestly, that there was half of me that was like, I love that he just did that, and half like, oh, I don't know. And then but the more I sat with it was like, no, he really just has a moral clarity.
Right.
And it's especially the one, and this is back tonight, but when they're in the mess hall and he's fighting the jailers, the gaolers, and they're really bad people, and that's how actually ends up becoming popular because they're just such terrible people, nobody will mess with them. But it does feel like he's overdoing it there, but he's just not being. The thing I really realized is he's not being political at all. He is just doing exactly what he thinks is right.
He's treating everyone exactly as he would want to be treated.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
and there is no like, I'm going to try to do what's I'm going to do. I'm
Will
going to
make you
actually
like me, or
Yep.
would be.
Yep.
It's easy to explain later. I don't explain. So.
Nope.
Well,
I am
feel
just
like
going to do what's right.
One cool thing that we see with his growth is in Night again, he's a 12-year-old kid in a man's body, so that plays into part of it too.
Well,
But
but he can't say that now. He's been 20 years in
yeah,
Sky.
now in Wizard, he's a man, and so he still has that moral clarity and that strength of character, but he's also learned and grown and is a little more politic in how he handles some of these situations. And that's where what I was talking about, where it comes out with, he's not going to lie, but he might not completely tell the whole entire truth.
No.
Yeah.
Then who does? Who does?
Yeah.
Even the most honest person
kind of-
doesn't tell the whole truth
You
all the
can't
time,
all the
because
time.
only a psychopath would do that.
Yeah.
I'm probably of the unpopular opinion that I think Abel's kind of a dick. Like, throughout the whole thing. But I also think he's like trying to be. But maybe that's because I like Manny more than everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Team Manny.
maybe that means I'm not a good
I am
person.
Team Manny. I want to be
Yeah,
on
Team Manny. I'm like, kind of over the whole paladin thing sometimes, and I'm like, everything he does is so perfect. Like, it's just a bit too.
Oh
it's
yeah,
a
like
bit-
Manny's so different.
Yeah. No, but he's like, I am a shitty cat, kind of like that's
I
like,
have to be a cat.
he's like, I served a witch, like whatever. This is me
Yeah.
now. Like Abel's like, no, it's May. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need the correction on grammars right now, Abel. Like, you're not an English scholar. You're literally a 12-year-old boy. You just told me that.
Or a fetus.
Or a fetus.
Or a fetus.
But then
Or
he's
maybe a fetus. Or
He
maybe a fetus.
circumvents the absolute
Perhaps
truth
a
to,
fetus.
be better about it. Like,
I know.
okay, nice. That's enough. All right.
Hot take corner.
Hot
No.
take corner. You could save us right now, couldn't you, Abel? But you're not allowed because you're an oversin.
Yeah.
Anything else that we want to touch on with Abel and his gang before we head back to Utgard?
His Abel and his gang. He's acquired quite a gang now. He still has he has an ogre, he has a talking cat, he has a talking dog monster, he has Pook, he has Toog, he has Uns, he has Iden's in his corner.
He kind of has
Garvin.
Uri and Baki still, right?
He has Uri and Baki.
He has
still.
Uri and Baki.
Uri, I don't know if Uri has maybe vaguely betrayed him. I think
She's become more sinister, but also, Baki is not
He
so
beat that
crazy
dragon.
about him anymore because
of two.
because now she worships Toog, right?
Yes.
So they're still nominally his slaves, but
Right.
they at this point are both working their own angles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which they kind of had been the whole time.
They,
anyway,
yeah,
right?
but
But
it's
I do feel
becoming
like
more
It
explicit.
spirals out post Grengarm, I feel like. They're
For
pretty
sure.
they're pretty much on his side before.
Well, because Uri, isn't it? It's Uri is there when they're gonna sacrifice Morsane, isn't it? Isn't it Uri?
yes.
Yeah.
Uri is there, and it does
Which
feel
is noticeable that it's not both of them.
Yeah,
yes,
he sees her.
it
it's
is
like,
one.
What the hell? What are
Yeah,
you doing?
Uri is
Yeah.
down there.
Yep.
So yeah, she's definitely, and that's an interesting thing too, is that they both are going off. Not only are they working different plans, but their plans are very much against each other.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We like Baki more because she
Yes.
likes Toog, right? And we're
Yes.
rooting for Toog. Yay, Toog.
Yes.
And so, but really, they've always been like this, right? They're elf. They're acting the way you
They're
would
mischievous,
expect
yeah.
elf. Yeah.
And there is I do feel like Uri's sort of full on fallback though happens after they turn into animals they turn into mules, or they
Mhm.
shapeshift into mules to
Like, that's
distract
with
the
the
Angerborn. I think they get sort of injured and roughed up a little bit, and that seems to be, I don't know if that's like the wedge.
That's why
like this
Uri
letter.
gets upset with.
I think
they
that's
both
it, basically.
Yeah, but they both have their own special turns and reasons for.
They do,
Mhm.
because Baki,
losing-
this is
yeah.
much later in the novel, but she eventually basically abandons Abel too, because
Yeah.
she
Well, let's be honest. Abel is an oversin now. He's not
Yes.
a human.
No.
He's
That's a
not
great
one of their
point.
gods.
Yeah.
He's too high. Yeah.
yes
So they don't technically owe him anything anymore.
no
Well, maybe they do because
If they're going to
Yeah.
be good people about it. they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
ultimately, they're just like the trash of Mythgarther anyway. So it's like, Which
Yeah.
when is that introduced into the not like that
Which
that
part?
that snapshot of just like, oh yeah, in mirror he like broke apart and this is all his body pretty much. Like when is that
That is in
introduced?
Wizard, I do believe.
That's
I
in
think
Wizard.
it's
Yeah,
in
where
Because
they
Wizard.
we
talk
get
about
that's
the
where we
bodies.
get the mythology and that
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is
those
all
those moments in Wizard, I'm like, I'm all about whatever just happened there. Like, oh, his blood and guts is yeah, that's my bread and butter. You know?
Yeah, in this novel, Wolfe does all the things that we say that he never does. He explains. He world
does.
builds.
He really
basically
does.
breaks everything down for you. So, but we still have all these major moments where we're saying, "What the heck is happening? Why is he doing that?"
Yeah,
So funny.
it's an amazing feat to be able to actually like kind of explain everything and you
Right.
still not know what you're reading.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
honestly
it's
like
phenomenal.
such a like a flexing movies. Like, my feedback has been I don't explain anything. Okay, I'll
There
explain
you go.
something now. And now you have a million more questions. This is why I did not explain before.
That's funny.
But going along those lines, Sam, I think if I remember correctly, or if I was understanding it correctly, I should say, Kalili is the inhabitant that was supposed to be in Aelfrice. And
Yeah.
then
She
she
made stuff, yeah.
creates the elf.
She's like the creator, right? She's the creator god of
Elf.
Even though
of
she's like
Elfris.
at this on the same she exists in the same plane as they do.
Mhm.
Which starts to make a little more sense why they rebel against her, because technically, given the rules of like godhood, the order of operations in this world, she shouldn't have any sort of authority over them because she is of the same realm as they are. Is that
Well,
right?
Elfris is fallen and broken just like every place
Yes.
else. They're
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
worshiping Garsich, who is a dragon. They're
Sure.
worshiping dragons. And
Yeah.
and in Mythgarther, humans are essentially serving half dragons,
Mhm.
and they're worshiping elf. They're doing everything but really worship. There's no point where you meet anyone who's actually doing anything to worship the
Correct thing, yeah.
Valfather or
Yeah.
the gods of
Yeah.
sky.
It's all
I
backwards.
actually do that. I love that about it. Like, it just makes sense that the confusion would be so prevalent with that. I mean, it's
Mhm.
dragon, so it seems dangerous, but it's like it's beneath you. Like, it's
Well, and
such a funny thing.
as we come to find out, right? That's kind of the whole point. That's Abel's entire mission.
Mhm.
Right.
I also really enjoy that the dragons, while it takes special setup, basically eating humans for them to be able to ascend the world.
and something special about it.
But-
Something special about it, yeah.
It's interesting that the levels of worship is not just a power thing, because the dragons are very powerful, but they still are supposed to owe their reverence to
Yeah.
elf.
The elf are powerful.
The elf
They
are
have-
powerful. They have a
yeah.
lot of abilities that humans don't have, but they are still supposed to cast their honor upward.
Yeah, it's not a power thing. It's
no,
more like a
it
position.
it feels like it should be in my
like
head.
you worship the most powerful thing, but no.
Yes, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's not.
One up.
It's just one up,
up
and
from
it
you.
and it's supposed to
'Cause
be that
technically
looking up.
Uns is their god.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, exactly.
absolutely.
Yes.
So
Yes.
here's this this is a continuation of a question that was posed in the last episode, because I both feel more confused about it and maybe have more clarity having
Nice.
read Wizard
That's
again.
right.
Classic. We talked briefly about why Garsage was able to freely travel both to Aelfrice and Mythgarther, even though we do see that he is lesser in Mythgarther than he is even in Aelfrice.
Mhm.
Even though he is of the same parentage as Arnthor and Morsane, whereas Grengarm, who's all dragon, is having to have this whole ceremony where he is very specifically, it seems, being fed Morsane in order to be able to rise up all the way
Yeah.
up to Mythgarther.
Well, isn't that
So-
just like that's just like with the elf, right? They need human blood in order to be elevated, to be powerful. Even Desiri, in order to grow Abel up, she needs a drop of his blood
Right.
in
Yeah.
order to work that that special power that she's got.
But so I
And
guess
the dragons got to eat people in order to temporarily rise higher beyond their realm.
so
Yeah.
my wondering, because Morsane says in Night, after Abel rescues her, that if Grengarm had eaten her, then he would have
Yeah.
well, he would have been as real in Mythgarther as he was in Muspel.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I'm wondering if it had more to do with her being half dragon, half human, like if there was some magic in that.
Possible.
That makes
Entirely,
sense.
it's
Maybe
not entirely
she's
plausible
hybrid.
because she's there, right? Maybe
Mhm.
he
Yeah,
gets whatever it is she is, so that she's there. It belongs there in Mythgarther. He would
Yeah.
incorporate.
He would incorporate that ownership.
and obviously he's not going against Garsage because as Setter, he definitely inhabits more of the dragon realm, and which also is kind of interesting that Garsage is living as a dragon in Muspel when his siblings are living as humans in Mythgarther. So it's like it's not a complete 50-50 of the genetics there.
I mean,
or
that
something,
would be
maybe.
just because they were taken there.
Well, and they were raised in
They all
Elfris, and
they were all raised in Elfris.
I mean, they
believe.
were taken to Mythgarther at some point.
I do think though I would suggest that. Well, it does say they had 2 human children and a dragon baby, and then maybe it is just basically a 50-50 when they mix
Yeah.
like that. But there's also the chance that Arthur and Morkane ate people.
Sure.
And
Well, because we know they have dragon aspects, right? Like
Yeah.
when Abel wears the helmet later,
Yeah.
he
sees the snake body
the snake body on Morsane, and Arnthor very
a lamia.
specifically
I think it's
says,
called a lamia.
"Don't look at me when you're wearing that helmet."
Interestingly, too, the
dragon-ish.
human top snake body, dragon body, is also the Beals family crests,
Mhm.
and
Ah.
they're said to have royal.
Well,
blood.
they're cousins to.
Yes, so there's something there. I think I don't.
That's
I
an
don't
interesting
have
point.
better ideas than just something's there, but I think something's there.
Maybe they have like their own terrariums in their house or something. Like they can sit under some red lights.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay.
That's
Wow.
it. Like I really need.
I got to
play
shed
on
the
this
skin.
Yeah.
What you don't have the monthly shedding like I do? Like it's just normal, right? Like it all falls off.
Don't-
Why is there
Don't-
this woman's skin here on the
Yes.
floor? It's
Don't look at me with
It's
with
just
your helmet on.
it's
I'm
just that time
molting.
of
Oh
month,
my
yeah.
gosh. But well, it is interesting now since we're talking about
Being half
Morsane,
dragon.
Morkane, and Arthur. It is really interesting the way in a lot of the Arthur stories the king represents the land and the people, and if the king's doing well, the land will be doing well, and that comes up in the
Mhm.
Grail narrative a lot. And it's interesting that in Mythgarther, the land is not fruitful and things are really struggling, all the while Gaynor and Arthur can't have children or won't have children, and she's
Mhm.
repulsed by him for maybe understandable reasons because he's like Snake Man or whatever, but there's an interesting sort of parallel there.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, I don't have more to say than that, but I think there's something there.
Yeah, what is? I guess I wasn't watching for this. What is their marital relation between Arthur and Gaynor?
It's I believe it's that they
say they haven't
consummated
they
their
haven't
marriage at all.
yes, they haven't consummated
Maybe there's
their
something
marriage.
he's waiting to do in order to
Well, I think
consummate, or
it's-
maybe
I
he
think
doesn't
it's
care. Maybe
Gain-
he's just
I feel like
aping
it-
out the
Yeah.
I think it's
behaviors
Gaynor's
of
side
humans.
though.
I think that's the
'Cause,
implication that Gaynor won't.
She says that she won't, but then Abel references when after Arnthor's passing, he's covered. Lord Beal and somebody else cover him immediately, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
he's burned on a pyre right then and there.
They
And
made
Abel
sure not to
references
show you.
in the book that if he had seen him, then maybe he would know why Gaynor
Oh,
didn't
Was-
want to
Yes.
to
Right.
lay with him.
because because Arnthor insisted he never wear the helm.
Yeah.
That gives
Yeah.
you the
Oh yeah.
vision.
Well, that's yeah.
Yes.
But there's
We all know
there's
that
obviously
too.
something that is physically there under the clothes too, not
Yes.
just
Yeah.
being
Not
impaired by it.
yes.
In that same I think in that same paragraph is that whole line of like Arnthor, he wasn't a good king, but he was like, and then
But he was a king.
but he was actually a king, and he did some king stuff, but he was not a good one. He wasn't great, but like yeah, he was the guy.
But
Like,
come on, he's a king.
that's like all I remember from it. It was written much better than that, but like
No,
ultimately-
that is a funny way to put it because it is that way. It's very honest.
yeah.
It's a very
is.
honest
Here lies
summation of
Arnthor,
him.
the guy that was king for a while.
Sure was a king.
Yeah.
He was
Not
brave.
a
He
good
was
king.
just. But,
That's so funny. All right, circling back.
Yeah, let's circle back. All the way back up
We haven't
to
talked about Thiazi
That's
at
what-
all.
yeah.
Thiazi's
next.
is a really great character.
Okay.
I feel like a lot of the
Thiazi is-
story is pinpointed on his character.
Yeah, have we ever met in a story of any kind a giant wizard?
It doesn't seem
See,
like you
I
should be able to
can't-
have
I
that many
can't-
powers. Like,
I can't think of any really.
I'm trying to think specifically of something before because I know that I have read like there are in the John Gwynn's The Faithful
Oh,
and
yeah.
Fallen series,
Mm.
Yeah,
but that was 2014.
so it's after.
And I'm not sure. There's not a bunch of blatant knight references, so I can't
Yeah.
say that if he read Wizard Knight. But I'm trying to think of anything pre Wizard Knight, and I can't think of any because it seems like a slightly overpowered
right.
character to
Unless
have.
it's a wizard that made himself real big, like that,
Sure.
like
Well,
a-
he's a
like
real
that.
nerd among giants, though.
Yeah,
he
to
is.
be
Yeah.
fair,
He talks completely different than the rest
He's
of
like
them.
into anime and all this stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and that's when it's revealed. Obviously, in a scene that we didn't mention before that they've requested to see Monty the cat, and there's an interesting scene there, and it goes okay overall.
Well, and that's
But,
in that scene you get the glimpse of not only is Thiazi a giant wizard, he's also a kind of, to circle back to George R. R. Martin, he's kind of fairly spider level
Mhm.
politician
Yeah,
advisor as well, which is not, that's also I think something you could pretty safely say is counter to the giant stereotype in fantasy for the most part.
Yeah, he's not a me pound
yeah,
flesh or anything.
Yeah.
He's an intellectual, and
Yeah.
he's a nerd, and all the other giants look down on him.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And-
and
I mean, not to jump too far, but he killed Gilling, right? He's the one that killed Gilling.
No,
No.
it's Garvin.
No.
Is it
Garvin
Garvin?
killed-
Yeah.
Okay.
Garvin killed him. Yeah.
Spoiler alert, it's
yeah, Garvin confesses at the end when he dies.
I
So-
like remember that, but also remember like
I mean,
it
he
kind of
confesses
feels
without
like it
straight
was
up
Thiazi.
saying it.
Yeah.
There
He
was a
doesn't
lot-
literally
I remember
say,
the
"I
Earth
killed
was-
Gilling."
Yeah, so much confusion at the end. Who, in fact, like someone actually asked Wolfe, "Well, by the way, who killed Gilling?" And he said, "Well, Garvin did."
Well, and that's why that's one of the cants that I referenced
Yes.
is I believe Lord Beale is questioning Abel after the setter fight,
Yes.
and he's grilling Abel because he knows that Abel knows, and Abel says, "I can't tell you who it is," and somebody asks him like can't or won't,
Well,
and
he's not
Abel-
saying I
And
may
then
not.
he says may.
well, but he very specifically
He
says,
says can't.
"I can't,"
And he says
because or like it can,
it's like he
punished-
can't.
it
It's
can't
like
be
he
punished
he can't be punished, and he can't confess
because he's dead.
Yes, because
Because
he's
dead.
already
and
dead.
the character is
Yeah.
dead.
He's already
And so
dead.
it's like and yeah, it's brilliant because if you're not paying close enough attention, you could still have questions afterwards. Because again, Garvin doesn't like say in his dying breath, "I killed
And
King
it was
Gilling."
me. Yeah.
Yeah, I got away with it, suckers. But
And now I'm off to
off to Valhalla.
Valhalla, losers.
Peace out.
In
Yeah.
that, real quick on Garvin as well, in that Duchy of Cumberbatch blog that that you and I both read some
Yeah.
of, chapter by
Shout
chapter
out to
summaries.
that fellow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Who I don't know their actual name,
I
but
don't either.
the write-ups were informative. There are lots of great allusions noted, and one of my favorite was that he alludes to Garvin being a stand-in for Sir Balin from uh from the Mort to Arthur, where Garvin gives the Dolorous Strike to the king of the Grail, kind of compares the Room of Lost Loves to this story's version of the Grail, which I think there's something to that. And then interestingly, Garvin dies just like Sir Balin does, fighting his brother. Now, Garvin and Garsic are not brothers, but they are both Garsic and Garvin, which like Balin and Balan.
Mhm.
And so that I was like, there's some really good like
Balin kill
Yeah.
and Balan
they die fighting each other. And so I thought that when I read that too, especially the Garsic Garvin, it was like, oh gosh, that it feels like Wolfe that feels very Wolfe. Like he must have because especially when you've got him delivering the death strike to a king, it's there's definitely something there.
Yeah. So, and if you only knew what it was, because because you never know, because sometimes he chooses a name,
Mm-hmm.
and you can look back in the etymology of the name, and you say, oh yes, of course, I see what he's doing here.
Yeah,
and then sometimes he's using an allusion to someplace.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a pun.
Yes.
So yeah, what is he doing? I'm not sure.
Well,
It's hard to say.
I've had this thought forever. I don't really believe in much, but I've always loved the idea of like someday going to an afterlife, and William Shakespeare is one of my favorites of all time, and going up to Shakespeare and saying, oh gosh, Mr. Shakespeare, I love your writing so much. I love your plays. I love how you used poetry and prose to show the different characters in your stories, and your use of iambic pentameter and breaking that for different moments. And Shakespeare just kind of being like, oh yes, you noticed that. I definitely meant to do all of that.
Oh,
Very
smart.
Very perceptive of you to pick up on all of that.
He just is the guy who always talks in iambic pentameter.
Yeah,
And-
Yes.
He just happened to be that
It's just how we
dude,
talked back then.
yeah.
It
It was actually a real social handicap for me, but
so there is a part of me that wonders, like, if Wolfe was just this level of genius that some of this stuff just accidentally happened,
Sure.
and how much was just was literally planned out beat for beat. And then I think that's just one of the geniuses of Wolfe is, that's a question that will never be answered.
Yeah.
Or if it's accidental, like because he just had such that
wealth of knowledge in
like
his head,
engineer type of brain, like
Mhm.
it just sort of layered on itself, like just made sense to him.
Yeah, he said he didn't plot out his stories or anything, or do a bunch of take a bunch of notes. He just said, I can keep it all in my head.
He just half-assed the whole thing, and like he's like, oh, it's just about knights. That's all.
So,
That's all
if you look at his last novel that he wrote at 87 maybe,
Yeah.
and he was his eyesight was failing, and he could barely write an hour a day. And he was cranking out this last novel, which he turned into the publisher 1 month before he died.
Wow.
And he just, it's as finished as it's going to get. But you can tell kind of what his process was. He would basically just write the whole novel, all from beginning to end. And then on the second draft, that's when he goes back and starts filling stuff up, because this last novel, the last half of the book, all the chapters are one half the size of the chapters at the beginning of the book. And so the first half of the book is half of the chapters is like 3/4 of the book. And so you can see, okay, so he writes it, and then he goes back and he fills in all those little asides and then stuff and those hints about what's going on. And he doesn't spend a lot of time hiding things. He spends time trying to point out, look, that's what I'm doing here. Look at this.
Putting stuff in. Yeah.
It's
almost like misdirection at that point, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he's like, I'm helping you. It's like, no, I'm not helped. No, I'm looking over here.
What a gift that he ended up leaving all of us, giving that kind of that last novel being a bit of an insight into his process.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. But so Gilling is killed.
Sophiazi, he's a wizard and a giant.
Another character that really starts to shine here is Sir Swan.
Mhm.
Because
who is a villain, right? He's like the whole. He's like
dude.
he's
God bless Swan.
who's that child king in Game of Thrones? He's
he's kind of
Joffrey,
Joffrey-esque. Yeah.
yeah.
But
You just really
he's
hate him, and then
Joffrey.
and Wolfe redeems him. You want to talk
He
about
really
how
does.
You redeem Joffrey, but like there it is.
well,
No.
and gives and you get such insight into why he is the little bastard that he is, with
his
a
dad
harder
giving him, like,
upbringing, but then especially after, and he talks about the regret that he has for not paying attention enough, not asking enough questions with Sir Rav, but also we kind of see some faults. Abel points out some faults with how Sir Rav taught Sir Swan,
Well,
because
he has his own regrets, and
Yeah.
Abel has his own regrets.
it's mirrored in how Abel treated him.
Swan did Rav right. He did Rav just right as he could.
He does. He gets
Yeah.
there, but like
He shows back up in Wizard, like trying to fight Tug, right, and gets his ass handed.
Right.
It's kicked.
right. No, we
That's
but
like a bloody
once,
nose and all this.
once he's knighted, and like that moment that he's this guy that's twice as old as all of the rest of the squires,
Mhm.
and still a squire, and everybody's whispering behind his back and talking shit because he just happened to survive when Sir Rav
was
didn't.
killed.
Mhm.
And so you really start to get a sense of like why this bitterness is there for Swan, but like he really steps up
Mhm.
once he's knighted, and even before he's knighted, as when Sir Abel reappears and Swan is in charge of he's responsible for keeping the line straight going into battle, and comporting himself as a knight, even though he has not been knighted.
Yeah.
Right.
But then as the tale progresses through Utgard and beyond, you really see Svan not just grow up, but really thrive as a knight and try to do things differently with Tug as his squire.
Well, I think you and we touched on this earlier. Uns and Swan are sort of two, not necessarily two sides of the same coin, but they're maybe inversions. Where Uns is someone who's a hunchback who needs to be taken seriously and not coddled, but allowed to perform and add value. And then Swan is the other side of that, where he's someone from a wealthy upbringing, but has no lands to inherit. But because of his wealthy upbringing, everyone is hard on him, thinking he needs. And it says this in the book,
and also because they think
Yeah.
that if they go easy on him, oh yeah, of course he's a knight.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, of course he's
yeah.
he's all these things, but then because of that, no one ever believes in Swan.
Yeah,
And everyone is always pushing him down to try to do that. And Abel is the first, and maybe Rav did this to some degree, but Abel finally is like, no, someone needs to believe in Swan, and then Swan rises to the occasion. And we come to find out that people have been saying that Swan maybe either betrayed Rav or abandoned him.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not.
And he didn't. And there's no way to clear his name.
and there's no evidence. Well,
there's no evidence.
He's doing a couple things. One is we get a little moral about gossip and cancellation.
Yeah,
where he's basically canceled by everybody around him
Sure.
for a rumor that got spread that had no truth to it. He had no way to prove that it was true, and which is so often what well, no, I didn't do that. And and the other thing is, why is it that knights resorted to violence when they're against aspersions of their name? And it's a matter of honor. It's it's how else are you going to prove? How else are you going to prove that you did nothing wrong? People go to court and they still aren't exonerated. They still have a black mark. So you say, well, we'll just do a trial by combat and let God decide. And so in that particular world, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, Swan might be the most real character in the whole story because of that fact that he's kind of a sniveling weasel, but at the same time, it makes sense why he is one, and it's almost not fair why he is one, but you still kind of hate him all
Yeah.
the same. All in the
Well, he's
same breath.
resorting to bitterness because
Yeah.
of
And
this
and
bad
that's
deal that he
that's what you
got
don't
when
like
everyone
about
else is
him.
saying, "Hey, you're rich, right?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
We-
like you can't cry about this. You've got like $100,000. That's enough.
We
you
also,
know?
I don't know if do we know if Wolfe read Harry Potter, because Swan is also very much a Draco Malfoy.
Now he's
In
a
the
lot
beginning,
like
for
that.
sure.
Yeah,
So-
if you're going to turn
I'm sure
Draco
he-
into
he's
a
heard of
real
it.
hero, and
Yes.
I guess Rowling kind of did with Draco.
Yeah,
Malfoy.
Draco does sort of.
He had a hard.
Sam,
kind
don't
of
get
a-
going.
he-
Okay,
Sam,
because he
so
really
mad
wasn't
about
I'm
this.
getting too
evil.
hot about this. I think
'Cause-
Draco should have gone a way different way.
We've opened a massive can of worms.
Yeah,
Can't-
but
we
I
can't
do.
talk
Oh
about
no! All the
We
Harry
gotta-
Potter.
we gotta go down
a,
a different
a
let's do it.
Cluely size can
I'm
of worms.
Team Malfoy.
Yes.
It made
I've
me
always
wonder,
been a
though.
Slytherin.
I just simply put, I think Draco was evil from the onset and could have gotten more evil.
Yeah,
Not
that's
redeemed.
fair.
He is not redemptive. Should not have been redeemed.
But
Yeah,
it-
you don't want to give him any credit for not being as evil as he could have been.
No, I'm happy with Lucius doing it, but not Draco.
I need to research this, but this reminds me that in Jack Vance's Lioness trilogy, in the first book, Soldier's Garden, there's a king who has a son, and in the book he's like, they talk about how his son is so worthless because all he does is play with doll houses. And there's this whole thing about it. And that book came out in 1983, and I need to look up if there's confirmation of this, because Stephen King released a book the following year, and it's all about a son
Was
who-
the House of the Dragon?
yeah, House of the
No, it's something with dragon.
I'm spacing on the actual name, but Eyes of the Dragon.
Eyes of the
excuse me.
Dragon. Yep.
But Eyes of the Dragon is all about the good son who plays with doll houses, and I just have to imagine that he read the Jack Vance book and just got
I fully
mad.
believe. I am willing to believe that.
Yes.
I am staying behind that theory. It
Yeah.
costs me nothing, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Back to Wizard Knight.
And it's an unfair story too. This is like the beautiful, like most well put together son, and then this is like the kind of frumpy one that looks more like his dad. Like,
Yeah.
that's
So we've got so much more story to cover here.
There's so much book. I mean, we
What
might
have we
need
done?
to we may need to prioritize.
Yeah,
super
Room of
important
Lost
things.
Loves. We got to talk about.
We
Room of
gotta
Lost
talk about
Loves.
Room of
let's
Lost
skip
Nuts.
let's skip ahead a little bit, because essentially we've Gilling's
I
been
do want to talk about Vil
Gilling's
too.
been
though.
injured, and
should we just get to like his
let's get to Vil. So
Yeah.
they're concerned about Thiazi and Shieldstar, and who Shieldstar is mentioned in Night. That's another one of those
Mhm.
spoiled things at the very beginning. Berthold mentions Shieldstar, I believe, being one of the giants that comes and attacks Griffin's Ford. But they're all concerned about an uprising while the king is mortally wounded. And in order to go scout out what's going on outside of the castle, Tug goes out to kind of get the lay of the land. And we meet Vil, which is an interesting character with that Duchy of Cumberbatch. That blog was also kind of maybe hinting that perhaps there's something more to Vil.
Yes.
Let me hear your Vil theory.
So
I wanna-
the proposal there is that Vil, who is a blacksmith, is potentially the Norse god Vili, who is Odin's brother, who I think is a craftsman and of some kind,
Mhm.
and who is lame, not blind but lame. And then the theory goes from there that potentially Vil is also Wayland, and maybe the one who forged a turn. And then at some point was an Oversin who descended down to Elfris, later coming back up in some capacity. I don't know if there's enough to make that full connection to Wayland, but I do think there is some interesting notes in that Vil somehow being blind can make a fire very skillfully, which I don't
See that part for
That
me.
maybe,
I think that I think that the name is a hint. I mean, I like to cook over fire as much as I can, and you're doing it primarily by feel.
Yeah, but I do think
So,
in a flint tinder that
Eh,
I mean, I'm sure
think you
blind
could-
people have
you-
started fires before, and again, I don't want to say that you can't do it.
You can't.
Here comes the blind fire makers.
Yeah.
Every blind person's gonna see this and be so mad about it.
yeah.
So, but I do think
Both of
I
your
make
answers.
fires all the time. I am an
Yeah.
arsonist. I'm writing
Yes.
you from jail right now.
I don't
And
think
then
you
I-
guys go.
I do
did.
think,
I canceled you also.
I miscanceled his phone.
Bill also then kills. He's given Parker's bowstring and uses it to strangle.
Well, no, he doesn't. He's not given it yet.
He steals it. Excuse me. He
And
steals it.
So this is another thing for me that kind of points. I think I kind of lean towards this being one of Wolfe's just like taking a name.
Sure.
I can definitely see Vil and Villy being related. Him being an Overson that has left Sky, I don't particularly buy, because he's outside of being a blacksmith. What we see of Vil is kind of this fraudster, really. Like, he's doing tricks and things to get money out of people, and that would feel more like, if anybody, it would feel more like Loki or something. That
Sure.
doesn't feel like
Who already has his own appearance. In it.
exactly.
Yes.
And there's also no hints, like when he meets Abel, there's no like kind of connection between the two of them as far as like, you're also an Overson. Here we're
Yes.
both Oversons.
I will. The scene later on though, where Vil like shows the blue eyes, though, that scene is so strange.
Well, but that's him. I think it's fake eyes that he pops in.
I know, but it's
his,
because he's doing sleight of hand.
yeah.
That scene is just weird, though.
It's weird.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I mean,
what are your thoughts, James?
I'm not disparaging anyone's theory. I am not in a position to do that. Okay, because look me up. But when I look at a theory, I'm always thinking, how does this improve the novel? Improve the novel is the
Sure,
wrong
yes.
is the wrong
How does it
idea.
What purpose does
add
it
to the
serve?
story?
What purpose
does it
serve?
have a purpose in
Yeah.
the story? Does it have
Sure.
a meaning? I mean, there is a book, to say this without spoiling, that Wolfe wrote, in which everyone is on a planet, and it takes place there, and Mark Aramini had this early theory about, well, this is some other place that we've already been. And I said early on, I said, I see all the things that you're identifying. The thing is, I can't figure out why it changes the novel even a little bit, if that's true. And then, of course, I came up, I realized why it made a big, it changed the novel. And I offered that to Mark, and he said, no, that's crazy. That's,
That's crazy.
so there you are. But that's the point, is I want it to, okay, if it's Villy, then I mean, if it's Vil,
Why?
Villy, then why? What is it?
Yes.
What it would be different if he weren't?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's interesting, the possible connections, but I feel like it seems to me that he gave a Smith, a Norse Smith's name.
Yeah,
It feels like to me.
it does. That's the thing I've been pondering and haven't had enough time, but it's like there's something going on with Vil that I don't feel like I don't understand, but it does. I can't figure out
He
why.
could just be a really good character.
Yeah. Well, and
which
it's
is great.
important to talk about now whether or not any of these theories have any weight,
Yeah.
because of what comes up
Well,
a little bit
But
later.
then we meet Vil. We meet Edela, who's the young girl. It turns out that she's the daughter of Vil and Lynette. And Lynette is a woman who has mostly lost her mind.
Mhm.
And that's
Which is a good transition here into the Room of Lost Love.
Absolutely, because when they enter, it is only after some of these things have been more settled, and there's the first battle, and King Gilling is officially killed. They do enter the Room of Lost Loves, and it is Abel Mani who slips in. I don't think Mani is actually invited.
No, I think he slips in.
But Lynette is invited into the room. And the Room of Lost Loves is very interesting. And I
don't know what to do. If you're going to ask for me to tell you what it means, I don't know what it means. I know it. I know it is the key to this novel.
I think it is.
I know it has to do with mothers.
Yes.
I have- I
The
have
Angerborn
some-
are not even loved by their mothers. That's
Yes.
what
I
this
have
book is about mothers.
I have a
I
theory
know.
about
So-
I have a theory about mothers.
Question real quick though. Do you think there's a book of like is there a Book of the New Sun connection that's meaningful? Because
Well,
obviously
Book
we
of
have
the New
the
Sun
end
is
of
about
Lost
mothers,
and we have the
Sun
end
is
of
about
Lost
mothers.
Loves.
Yeah.
Um
Well, I mean, could be. Well, actually,
What's the very
Now that I
it
think
feels a lot
about
like
it.
the guard. It feels a lot like the garden.
So here's a
Well, look.
Book
Without,
of the New Sun
I don't know if
spoiler
I can spoil.
warning.
Yeah, okay. There's a Book of the New Sun spoiler coming in.
okay.
So
Here's
prepare
the
yourselves,
and here is the
audience.
connection. Here is the connection. You can zip forward 1 minute and then okay. They come. Dorcas comes to this inn of lost loves,
Yes, yeah.
and she doesn't realize it, but she's been reunited with her son. Her son
I
is
think
working there.
Yeah.
There it is.
That is definitely the connection because
There it is.
that's what happens for Abel.
Yes.
And I want to keep this that I think that you're hitting the nail on the head that whatever super narrative is underneath everything, mother is an integral part of it. And I have a thought about that, but we'll save that when we get to the end. Well, we definitely learn about the bones. And this starts paint. This for me is when Garsage starts really getting painted in a bad light.
Yeah, it goes
Well, that makes it sound wrong. This is where we kind of start really seeing who he actually is.
Yes.
Um,
It becomes clear on both the Isle of Glass and the Tower that this guy's really not good.
yeah.
But no, it really is fully revealed that I mean, obviously he abducted
Stealing
Abel's
women,
mom,
including
women,
Abel's
yeah.
mom, to lure sailors, and then those women are also then consumed by his chimera.
Yep.
And Mag, the mother of Abel and Bertold, kills herself, drinks poison, so as to not be eaten. Or if you wanted to say she's giving a middle finger to whoever's going to eat her next, that maybe she's poisoned the food supply, so that she's going to take some with her. But really heartbreaking stuff. And what's one thing I was kind of struggling with is that she says that she climbs on Garsage's back and it with Abel, specifically does not take Berthold. And then we kind of lose track of where Abel is. And so, and I'm speaking of Mythgarther Abel, not America Abel, Art.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of lose track of where he is. So I'm kind of curious if, like, did he fall into Aelfrice and is that Abel raised by the elf for a little while too? And so then when Art from Earth stumbles into Aelfrice, then they do their little switcheroo with them. That of course assumes that we're going down the path of this being a fairy swapping of the children's story.
Well, that's there. I don't know what else.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
that's what I subscribe to for sure.
I ascribe to it, but I'm not convinced that's all that is to it. Because
for sure.
There's so many other bizarre things. So
I think you hit the nail on the head last time, where it's like it can be multiple things. It's a Gene Wolfe
it can
story.
be two
like,
things, right? Exactly. He can
how
merge
deep you
these
wanna
things,
go,
right?
You're going to find different interpretations,
right?
But that was one thing that I found interesting is like Mag kind of stops the description of where Abel went with them getting on Garsage's back and flying off.
Mm-hmm.
So did he go down to Aelfrice? Did he fall off and Bertold found him and raised him and it was just Mag that got flown off?
I like that. I think that
because Bertold
I would have to get about 10 paragraphs of lines in order to describe that sort of timeline,
Right.
but which I have done myself in other books. So
Right. Well, I've been
it
thinking
makes
that
sense.
like I
So
need to make notes for my next read through of like
yeah, I want to
pay
read your
attention
write
to
up.
this.
I look forward to your write up,
Okay.
the third write up
All
that
right.
covers
Hell
the
yeah.
entire expanse of this book. We finally
Challenge
can have. We
accepted.
need another one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted. But yeah, so another Book of Nights reference. I'm assuming he took this from this. One of the enemies that our hero encounters in the Book of Nights is a manticore, and that's another thing that we find. Lynette's family home,
Yes.
the house
crest.
sigil crest is the manticore. And
That's
so
interesting, yeah.
I maybe he did it on his own, but knowing that he was inspired by this, I feel fairly confident saying that's maybe a reference to Book of Nights. But we don't see what Manny sees.
No.
Right.
We just know that he gets revealed that he will continue on, and he comes more to grips with the fact that he is the combination of the two entities.
Right. And then that there's an eternal portion of him
Yes.
that will live on. It will not be him. It will be a piece of him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other thoughts? Because I feel like a lot of it is the mother angle, which kind of comes full circle as the story continues.
Yeah, this scene.
I say full circle. It's
yeah.
More questions are raised than answers. Of course.
Right. This is all about mothers. If you're looking to see who's winning between Michael Andre Driussi and Mark Aramini at this point, Mark is definitely got the high ground at this point in the novel.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but which is strangling Sutter,
so let's get to that, because this is one of my favorite parts in the whole book. So
well, there's a ton of amazing stuff here
for sure.
Yeah,
but
I only have one more thought to contribute, and that's like at the end. Pretty much.
All right. So let's just continuing chronologically. After the Book of Lost Love, they're able to get out of Dodge.
Yes. Well, Duke Martyr comes. There's an ambush.
Yeah.
Big battle.
Shield Star, the giant Shield Star takes over as king. He ostensibly is going to let them leave. He loads them up with gifts, and then, as luck would have it, Duke Martyr and the knights stumble upon an ambush that is set for Lord Beale and his party as they're leaving. And there's a battle outside of the gates of Utgard, and our heroes manage to escape because they essentially have now ambushed the ambushers.
Right.
And then then they get stuck in a fog, right?
Yes.
A very, very thick, obviously magical fog. And it wasn't entirely clear to me still. They seem to say that it wasn't the Aussie making the fog, but that the fog was maybe a result of the temperature change. Like the Aussie made it warmer.
They have
exactly.
Yeah, they have a like a little scientific experiment. It could be the Aussie.
And then as the temperature raises again or lowers again, the fog rises up. Yep. In any case,
it's true because there's an engineering explanation.
Right.
There, so. That's the real answer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Somehow they made like these tubes filled with chips that were just cut.
Yeah, there you go. So
fired them at the Giants.
That's right.
So
we got sour cream and onion. We got ranch. We got
give them the spicy mustard. That'll bring them down.
Anyways, back to Aussie.
So Tug goes missing, and everyone goes off in search of
with Edela and.
Well, we don't really know yet.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's fair.
It's just Svan and Abel just know that Tug is missing, and so in the midst of them searching for them, Abel and Gil find themselves back down in Elfrice, and are confronted by Dragon Kaluli.
Yes. White Dragon Kaluli.
which is interesting
Blue Eyes White Dragon Kaluli.
because she's not a dragon,
No, but she can
but
take
she
dragon
has a
shape.
dragon form.
Yes.
Which
Yeah.
is, am I correct? Am I remembering correctly that this is the first time that that's referenced?
She's
Is
made
that
up of
ever-
all these little bugs
Worms.
and animals and
Yeah.
worms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the first time we see her as a dragon. And I can't remember Garsage ever referencing her as a dragon in Night when
No.
this
No, I don't
deal
think
is
so.
struck.
No.
that Abel has to
No.
fight her.
No, because it's a surprise when you're reading it that there's a white
Yeah.
dragon. Then the reveal that Kalili is a dragon is surprise. But it turns out she's not harrying them, but she's actually protecting them because 4 other dragons
Right.
appear.
Yeah,
Right.
and Abel fulfills his promise to Garsage, which is to fight her.
Yeah.
And we don't even really see any fight. He just kind of yields.
No, well,
pretty quickly.
They dive off down together
Yeah.
to do it, and then it says they have a conversation. He yields to her, and he won't reveal what it said.
And this is one of those rules lawyer kind of not entirely the truth moments of like, I didn't say I'd kill her. I said,
Yeah, I
I'd
never
fight her.
said I'd kill her.
I
Yeah.
said I'd fight her, and I yielded.
Because
Um,
he's in a spot. He has like
Yeah.
a number of promises he has
Mhm.
to make.
Well,
that
this is an
will
impossible
cost him
promise.
honor.
Like,
And he has to fulfill them to cost the or else it'll
yeah,
cost him honor.
but it's also it's an impossible promise too. The idea of killing Kalili at this point after he's seen her, it's too great even for him to
Right.
accomplish. And then Sir Garvin and Sir Svan arrive, and that's what also Tug. We meet back up with Tug and Vil, and I'm blanking on the little girl's name, Yvette.
Edela.
Edela.
We did
Edela.
skip over though when the other dragons are out, when they get down into Aelfris. The first time we see him draw the sword.
Oh yeah, hell yeah,
It-
the
it
longbow
draws-
warriors.
Yes, and then in an Aelfris, instead of just like ghosts appearing, long dragon boats of
Yeah.
and massive amounts of warriors that are like more physically real.
Yeah,
Shows up,
well,
which
they're
that's just like so. Again, that's just like
they're not cavalry.
so
Yeah,
cool.
they're in ships.
Yes.
It is very cool. Moment.
very cool.
But
But yeah, fast forward.
anybody that has any thoughts, like, pause me because I'm trying to get to
Yes,
But you're gonna-
part- one of the
You are exactly like a little more than halfway through the novel. So
Yeah,
move
so
fast.
we've got to move a little bit. But so Abel will not fight even after everything that he learned in the Room of Lost Love. He will not fight Garsage himself, and he
Yep.
gives at first in this scene it seems like it's just going to be because Garsage was his friend, like we discussed last episode. He helps Abel level up.
Mhm.
He teaches him. He's one of Abel's teachers. So it seems on the surface level that is what it is.
Mhm.
He gives a fuller explanation later of why he didn't jump into the fight and save Sir Garvin.
To Whiston, right?
No, I think it's to Martyr and Beale. I think when he's talking about he knew that Setter would run
If he
and
fought
that
it.
Setter had to
Yeah.
die.
Oh,
and so
yes,
that he
yes,
knew that if
yeah.
he got into the fight, that Setter would run.
Yes.
Which is such a throwback to the very first conversation he has with Swan. Like, if something happened, you would run.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah. Yes. And he knew that as well about Setter.
Yeah.
And but he also knew that Setter had to die. So there was a part of it that he's my friend. I don't want to fight and kill my friend, but
He's like,
this guy has to die.
I know you're a chicken.
Yeah.
Like,
So Garvin and Svan charge in. Garvin is killed. Svan is badly hurt. But who actually kills Setter? And this was one of those moments on my first reading where I had to reread this section several times to figure out what actually happened. Is Vil, who on this reread I've noticed is like being piloted into it by the little girl on his shoulders. And like
Master Blaster.
like she like pilots him up onto Setter's back and then jumps off. And then the book describes Vil choking Setter with 1,000 hands,
Mm-hmm.
which on my first read through, I was like, holy shit, that's really cool. Like what
And that's how
Dalsim's
the
Street Fighter
novel
thing
is
showing up in
changed
this moment.
if he's an Overson. That's how the
Yeah.
novel is changed if he's an Overson.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But then when he confesses to stealing the string, to Parka's bowstring, when he confesses to pickpocketing that off of Abel, then it becomes clear he used that as a garrote on Setter, and the thousands of hands were from the spirits inside that bowstring,
Mm-hmm.
all reaching out and squeezing the head off, essentially, of Setter, which is just speaking as like again, reverting back to just, this is just a fantasy novel and a fan of fantasy novels. That is so cool.
that is one big expensive CGI moment, right?
It is.
Yeah. But it's such a cool moment, and something I can't think of anything I've seen like that. And it was just, it was one of those my jaw on the floor moments.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add? I know we're kind of skipping, but we got some big stuff to come.
No, it is. But I remember the same thing when I first read it. It was like, I have no idea what just happened. And I know that I know that Garsik's dead, but that's all. And then, but then coming back to it later, it is like, oh, okay, the poster. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Yeah.
So
with when you get some explanation later about what you saw and described, then you go back and you read, oh, okay, now I see what was going on.
Cool. So cool. And it makes it even cooler. And then he lets Vil keep the string, which kind of regret a little bit later on.
Yeah, I really wish I hadn't done that.
But he's shortly afterwards gifted Red Hall.
Yes.
And now we begin a whole new novel.
Yes,
truly. Basically.
We're into part 2 of the Wizard. One thing I found interesting, I know you like, and this was the first time I had heard about it was on the Duchy of Cumberbatch blog, was the theory that I can't remember if we talked about this last episode or not, but that Abel of the High Heart.
Oh yes,
that Parka actually meant heart as in a stag, HART.
Yes. So
why is the heart high?
Yes, well, basically the idea being that she says you are Abel of the High Heart, he being an American boy, and if we're going with the changeling narrative, mishears and assumes heart, and that he's actually the high deer. He does see a white deer during the story, with the idea being that in the Grail in the Morte d'Arthur, there's a part of the Grail quest, they see the Lord Jesu in the form of a deer with 4 lions, with the idea being that potentially Abel's real title is something to the akin of Abel of the High God, but in the illusion of the heart, which I think is actually there may be something there, and also again it being Wolfe, I don't think High Heart is wrong, but it's interesting.
Where I was going to go with this is
I like that.
It's not this is not at all and I'll bring it up when we get to it too. There's other things that maybe point to that mishearing of the word heart. But I do find it interesting on the literal heart, is that he is then given Red Hall, and he goes from Abel of the High Heart to Abel of Red Hall. And you could poetically, I think, describe a heart, the organ,
as a red hall.
Yeah,
I think that's interesting.
I like that one. I like that.
So he's almost repeating himself. I don't know. That just struck me as kind of interesting.
I like that.
But he gets Red Hall. He goes to Red Hall. And it's interesting. Like he stays in the whole story. He ends up staying at Red Hall for all of a week or so, enough time to train his men at arms before he's off to go try to speak with King Arthur. And that I'm not sure if there's any other major story shaping important moments there.
At Red Hall, he hears a rustling of wind in the
yes, and he does
chimney.
meet Desiri,
and he goes
out
and sees
there.
Desiri. He gets given a bunch of they divvy up the treasure, and he gets given the helm as well
Sure,
as a cup
yes.
and some other things, and that's where he sees Gilf, and he sees Baki, and he sees Org. Org looks like a snake.
Oh, and I guess
Gilf
Morsane
looks
shows
like,
up at Red Hall.
and I was
doesn't
about
she?
to say that was the
Yeah.
next thing. So we get that, which is a supposedly another Chimera reference, because Baki is like a flaming goat skin.
Mhm.
Gilf somewhat resembles a golden lion, and then you've got the snaky orb, or which is the classic Chimera, just kind of in separate parts. But then the big one there is Morcane to show up.
Yeah. And she tries to ingratiate herself to Abel / seduce him, as she continues to do.
She's a really interesting character, and that was another one the first time I was reading it, that it was like it's like it's funny. Well, I guess she's actually not introduced, but she's introduced at the end of the night, but you don't really know that at the time. But she is really compelling, and she's got this has this really interesting way of talking, and it is amazing to me. It's one of those things where like Wolfe's been holding back this really wonderful character till like so at the very end of the novel, and you feel like you just kind of assume things are wrapping up, even though there's a lot of book left,
And it's
but
not, yeah.
it's not at all wrapped up at all. So funny.
I want to jump ahead to a couple things.
Yeah.
There's so many characters. I can't keep all these character names in my head until
Lord Eskin?
like, yeah. So Lord Eskin.
Mm-hmm.
What's his title? The Lord.
I can't remember anything. I can't remember beyond Lord Eskin.
But he's like the I may trim this a little bit, but the Earl Marshal.
The Earl. Oh yes,
Yeah.
He's the Earl Marshal.
Pick up the Wizard Knight Companion if you're a fan of Wizard Knight.
There it
If you're
is.
not a fan of Wizard Knight, what the hell are you doing listening to this episode? So when he meets the Earl Marshal, which I will reference again a little bit later, but he is one of the routes that Abel is trying to get at King Arthur.
Yes.
Because he has, it's like as he gets closer to the source, the closer he gets to where he's supposed to deliver his message, he's getting kind of more frantic about it in a way. Not frantic, but like it's like he still doesn't know what he's supposed to say, but it's kind of starting to bubble out of him.
He knows that when he's there.
Yes.
Now he knows.
Yes.
He doesn't have any memory of his past. He doesn't have any, but he doesn't know
Yes.
what he's going to say. But he knows that when he goes there and stands before King Arthur, he's going to know what to say. Which is there's a biblical reference right there. Don't worry about what you're going to say. The Holy Spirit
will fill it. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like he's being compelled along the way, and as he gets closer, it's that compelling is stronger, and the other route that he takes, because supposedly Morsane's going to help him, supposedly the Earl Marshal is going to help him, but then there's this tournament that he joins, and there's a couple interesting things. We see him in this tourney setting after being and proving himself over and over and over again in battle settings, handling himself very well, but not well enough to get a seat at Arthur's table.
Right.
And then eventually that becomes purposeful. And one thing, because Abel has grown and he's literally older now, but he's our age, he's mid-30s essentially, because of the
20
time
years,
that he
he's probably,
spent.
yeah, he's probably, well, if you're
Because of the time
counting
he's-
from when he was a kid and taken,
Yes.
and you assume 20 years, yes. But once again, he spent years in Elfris. We don't know how many years.
Yes, for sure.
He could be, he's probably, in my mind, he's 40 something.
Sure.
Yeah.
So-
Sure. But he's a grown ass man.
Right.
And one thing that we see get him in trouble a couple of times in Night, thinking specifically about when he calls Pook his friend and not his servant. We see another kind of faux pas for the first time in a while, when he just like without any hesitation agrees to wear Gaenor's scarf and
Mm.
be her champion.
Mhm.
Even though she's the queen and married to the king, he just sees it as, oh, great, here's another way that I can, because obviously he's not interested in her sexually or in a relationship. He still has his eyes on the prize with Desiri. But he sees it as another route to get to the king, when in fact he ends up really
Pissing the king off.
Oh yeah,
Right.
he pisses him off royal, because now there's all these rumors already about Gaynor, and now here's this knight blatantly wearing her favor in this tourney.
And it turns out he ends up refusing a boon to his sister, who was the
Yeah.
one to ask to have him there, which is
But all of this leads up to kind of the final leg of this tournament, which is it's not even a part of the tournament, but this duel, because of Morsane dishonoring, questioning the honor of Gaynor. And I do wonder if it was not planned on their parts to do this, but we end up getting the Sir Abel versus Sir Loth fight, which is one of my favorite fights in the whole book. It's one of my favorite fights in any book. We've met Sir Loth previously, and he's a zombie.
Once again, which came first? Is this Game of Thrones? It came after this?
The original I think Game of Thrones started in 94.
Okay, well,
I think is when
then I mean,
Game of Thrones was written.
Yeah, okay, so
yeah.
I don't know. It's he may have borrowed it from
quite possibly
Martin. Yeah.
But I love a good zombie. Absolutely love a good zombie, and this is a phenomenal zombie with the maggots. And the first time that we meet Sir Loth, when Morsane kind of turns him off, he just falls to the ground and a maggot flies off of him.
Right.
Super gnarly, very metal. Love it. But then this fight between them is also extremely metal. You have Abel kicking the shit out of him. He impales him on his lance multiple times, and obviously he's a zombie. He's just getting right back up. And
I hate zombies.
I do love the that he didn't have to do this, because obviously Loth can't talk, but Abel still gives him I can't remember the knightly term for it, but that he lets him
chance
get up
to
and
say,
gets a new weapon.
Gentle right.
Yes. But I think my favorite part, and what really endeared me to a lot of these other side characters even more, is that when Sir Loth ends up summoning his zombie horde, all of Abel's guys jump in without hesitation.
Wystan, Pook, and Uns.
Wystan, Pook, Uns, and Cloud, and Gilf are all in it as well.
Oh yeah, they're there at that time.
All the Pokemon
that are there and available to him are jumping into the fray, fighting alongside Sir Ash. And but it's a really kind of beautiful moment in this horrible, gnarly fight of, his boys have his back, which is very cool. But the result of that fight ends up being that Sir Abel gets to sit at table with King Arnthor, where he eventually
delivers his message, which is just basically be better.
It basically is.
Please be better.
We need gods to worship, and you guys aren't doing all that great. So
I saw it compared to the Sermon on the Mount. It's reaching a little bit, I think, but the message being, be better.
Yeah.
Be better.
It's interesting.
And that obviously does not sit well with Arnthor.
No.
And
and then James, I think you referenced in the last episode, then, Abel gets tossed in prison and it instantly becomes king of the prison. King of
the dungeon. Yeah.
I do love that. It is brutal though when Arnthor's like, surrender everything to your king, and he's hand over the sword, hand over everything, and it's a frustrating moment.
Yeah.
It is. And as it's an interesting inversion of the story, because obviously King Arnthor is a reference to King Arthur. It feels very much a reference in a lot of ways to Excalibur, and as far as being like the ultimate magic sword. But as we find out later, like Arthur isn't even able to draw it. So it's an interesting kind of inversion of the Arthur story.
He just has it on the baggage.
Where King Arthur can't draw the sword.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not he may, not he can't. And but yeah, prison's rough. I think one of the more notable things being that Baki eventually kind of abandons him there. Everybody ends up abandoning
she shows up
there.
a few times in the prison. There's a later time as well, but
I guess
she does come there, and
it's more after he's been reapprehended and thrown in the second dungeon. At that point, Org is kind of the only one that hasn't.
Org is there.
Only friend.
Org eats the first goaler, the first jailer, and then he goes around and he buddies up with everybody and starts taking care of everything, which is pretty funny. He's there for a bit and then finally gets out to Gaynor gets him out, and then he's riding around and she betrays him, and he gets sent back into the bad dungeon. So
get in the really bad dungeon. He has to go to jail for real now.
One. Yeah. And he's there for a while. I love his line to Org's getting hungry, and Abel just tells him, "Hey, just don't eat anybody that you know." Any man that you don't know, you can.
He's loosening all the rules from all stuff.
It's really also interesting, this prison, which I also think that's a Book of Nights reference, because in Book of Nights there's a home without an end. The dungeon seems to basically have no bottom.
Yes.
Which is I feel like there's something there, but at that point, and now I'm spacing then, but he teams up then with Lord Eskin, who Arthur comes.
Arthur comes because in the midst of his being in jail, the Austerlings have
yes,
and the war with the Austerlings has begun, and it's not going well.
No,
and because of how badly it's going, Lord Beale and Duke Martyr have finally convinced Arthur to
let Abel
release Abel from prison so that he can help lead them to victory. And then while he's recovering enough to try to leave, he then ends up taking the Earl Marshal down, trying to go down just to Aelfrice, but they take a wrong turn and go through Muspel, and we get down to
the most low.
Niflheim.
Yes. And so this is something that we have to talk about.
Do we have thoughts on why Abel kept going down? Was he just sort of out of his mind? It's sort of an interesting, it's a very strange part of the book that just sort of happens.
He's very disillusioned, right? With the way it's like he's been abandoned by all his friends.
Yes.
He's lost his horse.
Yes.
He's lost he's lost his sword. He's got nothing. He's just kind of descending deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's maybe it's a metaphor for despair. And
his mental state at that point, because he also like kind of takes the Earl Marshal down not in like oh hey, you really wanted to go down and see Aelfrice, right? Like, well, let's go down, I'll take you down and have a look. It's like, oh, you wanted to see this? Well, we're gonna go see it now, and he's dragging him down. So I think I think it's definitely an indication of like a physicalizing of his, an externalizing of what's going on inside Abel. And it goes all the way down, and
you see the fire and the dragons, and then you get down to the world of ice.
And that seems obviously like a reference to oh, come on, the Dante's
Dante's Inferno,
where the actual lowest level of hell is ice, and that's where Satan lives. I am sure that it is the most low god lying.
Yes.
All he does is lies.
I also
low god.
Feel though like it is an interesting idea of it of it being
A
not
circle.
a vertical
Mhm.
system
Yes,
of
but
realms,
it's
but
sorta-
a
It's
circle.
it's a very plausible lie.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
then he's a big toad, a giant toad.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
he turns around and he promises that if I were to turn around, you would see the Most High God. But
Yes.
he runs. There's all this earthquake and stuff going on, so he runs away, and you see that his
Just
back
pus
is
and
covered
boils.
in pus and soil and maggots.
Yeah.
And so he's
So
a liar.
I think it's a
Yes.
lie worthy of the most low God because it
It
is
is.
plausible and interesting in a way.
And
Yeah.
it feels wrong when he's telling it, but then because he says, I am the most high, also the most
Right.
low. Elysian and Niflheim are one and the same. So, but
Yeah.
it does feel wrong, but it does come at you in such a way where you're like, you really are questioning, like, maybe is this
maybe is he going here? Yeah.
is that actually what's happening? But that scene really is interesting because obviously Lord Eskin, the Earl Marshal, just falls on his knees and begins worshiping him. One of the interesting things in that scene is at the beginning, Abel keeps saying he was all around me. I was like inside of him. And again, it feels like there's something to that I don't understand.
Every time you go down, the worlds are vast, but they are smaller. They're smaller
Yes.
than the world above them.
Yes.
So if you think about them in a bunch of spheres.
And
you go smaller and smaller. Now
Yeah,
each sphere is actually infinite in size.
Right.
But the sphere above them is bigger
Yes.
than the one
Yes.
below, because with infinity you can do that. If you
Yes.
2 times infinity is still infinity, but it's also 2 times infinity.
Yeah.
So you can that actually makes sense. So he's at the level of the most low God. That's all there is.
Yeah.
Is the most low God.
Yeah.
There's nothing to worship him. There's nothing for him to create. It's literally just this being that's down there.
Right.
That's it.
And then basically every time he talks, like the ice breaks and the world shakes, and it's yeah, and because it seems more stable until that moment. And then from there, though, they do, and they have that quick confrontation as the earthquake, like you said, he runs away, and then they begin to go back up. Eskin wants to abandon Abel, but he's like, well, you want to fight the dragons by yourself, which is pretty funny. But
this is also one thing I want to point out. This is also where Eskin reveals that he has a bastard son, and it's this other character that we've met.
Yes. But there's a moment when they get back to Aelfris, they're sitting watching, and then they turn to leave, and they look back, and there's another copy of Eskin sitting. There's there, and it is one of those things. And then Abel just says, "There are things in Aelfris I don't understand."
Cool.
Which is, I know, it's like, why are there two Eskins? Like, I have no idea. But okay.
But
yes.
So then they get back up, and of course, because they've gone all the way down, several years have passed, I assume. But enough time,
like 6 years.
Enough time where the Osterlings are winning.
Yeah.
They manage to meet back up with some of their friends, and then get out and reunite with King Arnthor and his army, which now Iden is there. Lord Beale, everybody, they're all together for these final pushes, it would seem, to try to defeat the Osterlings. Is there anything anybody wants to? There's a lot of cool stuff, obviously. The Lotharlings are really cool.
Okay, so he has a, what's the name of the name of the god is not
Lothar.
It's Lothar.
Yes.
Well, he's not Loki, but he is Loki.
Yes.
As there is a Norse god, Lothar, but he's
kind
of a trivial, not interesting. This is obviously Loki, and he's a bad guy, right?
Yes.
He's a trickster, but he does come through on all of his promises.
He does. It's an interesting idea.
And he's going to give him, was it 5 things that if he agrees to do one thing that he wants him to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he has, and one thing he wants him to do is, well, it's three things. He has to betray his promise to Valfather 3 times. And he says, and hey, I don't want just little trivial secret stuff.
Yeah.
It's got to be big and
Gotta be
showy.
Yeah. And
so
he's
not going to
summons,
lawyer his way out
I
of
know.
this one.
That's so
yeah.
he summons the weather for one. I'm honestly spacing on the second one. I know the last one is
Well,
obviously.
that was before the weather summoning
heals-
was before.
Oh no, he
was
heals
before.
and then he gives to Siri his blood.
Uh-huh.
That's
Right.
all 3. That's all 3. Yeah.
But yeah,
I was
that's
equating the
fascinating.
healing and the
But
blood.
he does. He Lothar comes through with everything. He brings Cloud back. Although you could argue that he doesn't do anything to ensure that Cloud can stick around.
No.
The
No.
Valfather takes Cloud before the big
Right.
battle, at the
Yep.
start of the big battle.
Yep.
Right. But he says, I really do like Lothar a lot as a character, because he says, okay, so
well, Abel
says, what do you want?
says,
So what do you want from me? He says, okay, well, I want an army. He says, how big of an army? He says, I don't know, like a million or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Come on, be reasonable.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll give you 500.
Yeah.
And other things, you got to wait.
Yeah.
I can't do it just right now. I got to give me some time.
It's so funny.
And then he ends up meeting these sons of the dragon, who are,
I
of
know,
course,
it's so great.
it's of course the name of Caduceus, who sews the dragon's teeth and raises it, and that's their myth. That's of where they came from.
Yeah,
and
so
he
they're
has to
literally
defeat-
called the Lotharlings, aren't they?
Mhm.
Am I remembering? that
I
correctly?
think that's used for them as well.
Yeah. And
yeah.
so he has to, and he can't just, they don't just show up and say, hey, Lothar sent us. No, he has to kind of defeat them and win and beat their boss.
Yeah.
And then there's and then they're still fighting the Osherlings, and there's all these, there's a captain, a leader. Now his brothers have all died. They're all fated to be kings and then die, and then someone would take the place. So they've all died, and he's the last one, but he can't be killed except with this one sword that his father was carrying. And of course, what are you going to do? No one has that sword.
I know.
And it turns out that earlier, I think it's Baki or Uri has given
Uri, I believe,
Abel
stole it.
I found it. It was in a crate. No one's going to miss it. Don't worry.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
as soon as he hears that, he says, "Oh, okay."
It's like such a completely accidental Deus Ex Machina right there.
Yeah.
Also, I no, and that sword, I love the sword. That it's awesome. Do we think there's anything to? And again, I can't think of how this adds to the story other than just adding sort of more mythic meaning. But we have Abel, and then we have the Khans. Khan and Abel is that?
That could be.
Yeah, I don't.
Entirely possible.
Well, especially because it's
why not? Yeah,
I think
let's go for it.
I think it has to be because if you just listen to it, the audiobooks are great. Also, if anybody's not listened to the audiobooks, but if you're just listening to it, you would assume it's going to be spelled Khan.
Yes, but it's spelled Kaa. I mean Caan.
Daan is how it's spelled.
It's actually even more like the name Cain.
So I think that it's certainly a reference, but it's an interesting.
Cain is not slaying Abel.
Exactly. Yeah. It's
Abel wins this time.
I am not sure to what.
No, I don't know either.
So Arthur fights.
They
kill each other. He dies.
And we get that moment that we referenced earlier where his body is immolated very shortly afterwards to hide his dragon form.
Right. And now Abel can't go back to Sky, right?
Because and so he goes all in and starts. And this part, I've read this book twice now, and this part gets me every time. I get very emotional as he's healing all of his people.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the most beautiful moments I've read in any book ever, as he goes down the line and everybody that's with him, whether they've been hurt in service to him or in these wars where they're fighting together, or in Unz's case, he heals his back, he gives Pook back his missing eye. He takes care of everybody.
Did Pook is better off with just one eye.
But one thing that I love and found very interesting is like he's trying to heal everybody as quickly as he can, because he knows that at some point the Valfather is going to show up take him away, and he's going to have to stop.
Right.
And one thing I loved was that Volfather does show up, like when he's a third of the way through healing all of his friends, and he just kind of sits back and watches and lets Abel do it, and lets Abel finish healing everybody, and he lets him have that closure with all of these people and give back to them, and only when he's finished with the last person and he's spent physically, he can't even do anymore, does the Volfather say, "You're done. You're done."
Yep. And he still gets an offer to return to Sky.
Yeah.
And
but no, because he can't take Desiri with him. So
but he still looks at Desiri with the helmet, sees her for what she actually is, which is just sticks in mud.
Mm-hmm.
And then lets her loves her still, gives her his blood, which makes her turns her from a green-skinned elf to a green-eyed woman. And it's an awesome moment. And then there's 3-4 more paragraphs about them.
And then the final one is Michael, the archangel, comes down and says, "Hey, which we have seen before. He was already on his way in night, and now he's finally arrived." And says, "Hey,"
and he says, "You've got to go help us. You've got to go help a new king." So there's a new king that needs your help. Is there? I wonder if there's an answer to that question.
So this is one of my 2 theories that I wanted to talk about here at the end. This is where I feel like perhaps you could read this series starting with Wizard.
Okay.
And that perhaps all that time that Abel and Desiri are in Aelfrice post the battle, post him not going back up to Sky, is their time together before the start of night.
Well, okay, here's my problem.
Because it talks about them going being kids.
I say no on this because you've got Desiri behind, and she's not the same person she was at the beginning of this novel. How does she go back? Is he going back in time? Are you saying?
Maybe. And this is just, again, this is not even half baked. This is like the ingredients are barely put
30-second microwave.
We're just going to put them all together on the table. And they're all there.
And again, I'm not going to say one way or another until I actually perform this experiment. But I could see that especially because when we see Michael in the night, he says, I'm off to Aelfrice to find that fabled knight, Sir Abel of the High Heart.
Yeah.
And then we next see him coming down to Aelfrice to find Sir Abel of the High Heart. And I could see there being...
Well, there's a time issue. I mean, obviously time is wonky here. So all bets are off.
It being a loop, perhaps.
I don't know. I just think that the idea of this, though, is always moving further up. I feel like Abel's got to move. He's got to get to Cleos, right? Next.
So the one thing I could say there is I think there's some speculation because at the very beginning of night, Abel sees himself for a moment. And that the idea being that Abel at that point has summoned himself the way the Michael summons the Volfather.
Oh yeah, and you say, "Hey, okay, Elf, you need to go get this kid out of."
So with the idea, not that it's not a loop literally where at the end it's not that then he goes back. It's that at the end then that's maybe the moment he summons himself, even though he's already done everything's maybe I don't know.
Entirely possible. Yeah. It would explain why he's taken.
And potentially then it could be that because we were wondering who changelinged Abel, who changelinged Art. If this is a changeling story, maybe Abel changelinged himself. And it is sort of a manifest destiny thing where
time and the weird time travel.
So he's like, I'm here and I need to do these things. So then let me use my oversense power to swap-a-roo. Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't know when they swap or what happens there. But sorry.
Well, I don't know about that, but I will say something. I have had an insight since we last talked, and I'm going to confirm Mark Aramini's theory. I'm going to move away from the changeling theory, which I still love. I haven't given up on it, but I'm also going to betray him. So you knew it was coming, Mark.
Yes.
You knew it was coming. So Mark's theory is that Abel is a fetus. He's absorbed by his twin. He cannot be born. Okay. let's look at the names here at the end of the story. We have Bold Bertold. Birth is literally in Bertold's name. Birth. Okay, so we set it up here. Able. Able means able to be born.
Yeah.
But art. Art means am. Thou art. I am.
Oh wow.
Ben is past tense. It means was. Suggesting he's that Abel's the one who is able to be born. It's Ben who cannot be born.
Fascinating.
Oh.
So he's writing he's
writing to
theory,
his lost twin.
His lost twin that is not there.
And maybe the reason the whole thing about reuniting with his mother is because his mother died in childbirth.
Okay. Well, so all right. So transition, because this is the theory that I've been baking.
Bring it on.
My theory is that Abel's mother, Art's mother, died in childbirth. It was thus an extremely traumatic birth for Abel himself, and that a lot of his actions throughout the story are him kind of putting himself through this nightly quest of atonement to make up for, in his mind, killing his mother and being the reason that she's not there anymore.
That fits with some things that Wolfe has written before.
And there's a lot of, so there's almost no happy mothers in the story. The first mother that we meet the Fisher family, and they seem okay. But Toog's mother is just terrified of Abel.
Not present. Yeah.
She's terrified of Abel. Desira dies split with her head cloven.
Mm-hmm.
There's a split open. And then we get several other references throughout of the splitting open, the description of the birth.
Was it cesarean?
Well, I mean, if she is dead and they're ripping a baby out of her,
yeah,
you know, which would also, I know, again, apologies, Mark, I haven't had a chance to read the entire treatise, but he references a lot. There's a lot of references to not being able to breathe or having a hard time breathing, and that could definitely be the case if you're a baby trying to be born and the mother has died and you're stuck.
Right.
So that could have been a trauma that has lasted through with Abel. But we see in the description of when Gerda talks about giving birth to giant children, when the witch is describing coitus with a giant and being split open, and then at King Arnthor's feast, when the goose that is, or the swan that is set forth and full of other smaller birds is described as being split open.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there's several, I believe Sir Garvin's wife dies in childbirth. Escol, the Earl Marshal, his wife dies in childbirth. And then our story kind of ends, or Abel's journey wraps up with healing everybody.
I like that. I like that a lot. No happy mothers. I like the splitting.
So it's, again, this has only occurred to me on my second reading through it. So I'll be examining it further as I continue reading into the future. But that's kind of one thing that there were a lot of things about Mark's write-up that really appealed to me. But this is where I kind of saw it going in my head, perhaps, was that it is about his mother died in childbirth and he is desperately trying to atone for it. And quests of atonement is a knightly trope, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a fairly common reason for a knight to be sent out on a quest, or to put himself on a quest, is to atone for something.
Yeah.
I wonder too, we get the whole car accident vision too, where there's I initially thought thinking of this as a changeling story that's maybe Art who's been hurt in a car accident, and then that's when the switching happens, possibly. But it also could be, and this takes maybe not takes away from Abel or Art being born, but it could also be that there was a car accident while she was pregnant, and
Sure.
then they are having to tear her open to get the baby,
if she died in a car
baby
accident
or babies out,
and they're trying to save the kid.
I do like the idea that Ben and there's no evidence that Ben is older or younger. I do like the idea that Ben and him are twins. Is there?
Yeah, at the very beginning, Ben is seemingly in charge.
Mhm.
He's got a girlfriend, Jerry, which is spelt, and this is called out in Michael Andre Driese's book. Jerry is spelled Geri, which is Gary, one of Odin's wolves.
Interesting.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, Ben and Berthold are fairly obviously when Abel
similar in ages.
When Abel meets Berthold, there's a vast difference in age, but I think that there is a much smaller. Another thing, another point of evidence for this is when Mag is describing giving birth to Abel in the book of, or in the Room of Lost Love, she survives it obviously, but she describes it as being a very hard birth,
Mhm.
and that she was praying to the Oversons or I can't remember who she was praying to, but she was praying that her life be taken and the baby survive.
Right.
I do really like it okay, wait, back up. It is really interesting that when he puts the helmet on, though, he says, Gerda was still there. It is actually Gerda and then Jerry, spelled the same beginning too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it is he then looks at Berthold and he says, I don't understand it, but
I saw
Berthold
you,
was gone, but I saw you, Ben.
Yeah.
So Berthold is actually Ben. Yeah.
Berthold is Ben.
Is Ben.
Gary is or Jerry is Gerda.
Yeah.
Abel is Art. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Art, Abel. Those are good called out. Bert, I'm really annoyed that I never noticed birth. It's literally right there in the name Berthold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's what I've been
old.
That's the theory I've been.
Okay, wait a minute. We have one more. We have one more theory.
Sam, you had a comment you were saving.
No, it wasn't a theory. I just like I like the most low god being the most high god. I actually didn't take that as a lie.
Interesting.
I took that as the actual
took
truth.
it as some seriousness.
Yeah, just because of probably Ymir and the whole origin of everything. It kind of seemed like almost on the nose, but I guess that's a bit pessimistic in its outlook.
Well, I like it too. I don't know that it's
not like a lie to me.
I don't know that it's true, but I like it.
Yeah. I do think if it was true, the scene would have been different than it ends up. But I do. It is an interesting idea to ponder. No, I know.
To Cleos or whatever. You never go.
We don't know. We
he
don't.
Will.
Get to see it.
He will.
He'll get
there.
Abel will.
If
anybody can get there,
he's able to.
Yeah,
can and may go.
George he's not here anymore. Gene isn't here anymore. Sorry.
Abel can and may get there.
Maybe Gene is there now.
Yeah.
He's definitely there. He's got big old wings on, and he's saying, "Hey,
he skipped all the way up there."
Yeah.
But no, I don't have any more other theories to present. I do think the fetus theory is very interesting, though. Especially when
I cannot get away from it. I would love to dispense it because it would be easier, right?
I know,
but
because with it being the healing and the giving of the blood and the giving up of oneself. I mean, there's definitely something there. It's very. I'm really excited to read the entire thing. So
yeah.
But.
Well, and stay tuned. Maybe there will be the Stephen Berryessa write-up about.
That's we gotta have it. And and if we come up with more theories, we'll keep thinking, and we'll have to we may have to revisit this conversation.
Yeah.
No, because here's the thing: the nature of a Wolfe novel is, you reread it, but you also reread it in your head in between those times.
100%. Yes, yes, that's never ending. Yeah,
Right.
Which it's wonderful. Wolf cult forever.
Yeah.
All right, James, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's
This
fun.
episode went way over time, I think, but I mean, my God, what a phenomenal conversation, and thank you for being so generous with your time. Check out James on the Rereading Wolfe podcast if you have read Book of the New Sun.
If you've read, if you don't care, I mean,
if you don't care,
as I always say, actually, I'm not the one who said this. This was John Clute, editor of the Science Fiction Encyclopedia, who said, your first read is your second read. And for that reason, these books are impossible to spoil.
Truth. Yeah, it's true.
Truth.
But you also, while you guys are working through Book of the New Sun right now and are currently in the beginning of Sword of the Lictor, you guys have had some standalone episodes on other Wolfe works.
Yeah.
Many of them going years back, but they're all still available to listen to, and I've listened to many of them, and they're really great. So
yeah. So everybody, give Rereading a Wolfe a listen. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a subscribe, give us a like, leave us some comments. We love hearing from y'all. And James, we'd love to have you back on at some point to talk more Wolfe. This has been absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. Give me a call anytime.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. We love y'all. Good night, Namarie.
See ya.